Commissioners can all turn your microphones on, please. Bring them down. We will call the Lake Orion Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, September 6th to order. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Zedek.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Cummins.
Present.
Secretary Laurent.
Present.
Commissioner Dunn.
Present.
Commissioner Lamb.
Here.
Commissioner Sable.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Van Portly.
Here.
Chairperson Zedek, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. With that, we have an agenda. We need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, item 5A is the approval of the minutes from the August 1st, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve. Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We will now ask for public comments on non-agenda items. So it's not the Mosheri development. Is there any comments on non-agenda items? All right. That said, we'll move on
Mr. Chair,
to, yes.
I recommend that the people are notified that there's another room with audio, and if they would like to, if anybody has trouble and they'd like to go to the other room, that's available with the TV and audio, just saying that it's out there.
Thank you. Yeah, there is some annex rooms, is that called the boardroom? With a large screen TV. Just in case you're having trouble hearing, we'll try to speak up. Okay, with that, it's time to move on to what everybody's here for. It's a public hearing. And so first, I'll set some ground rules. I think everyone had a chance, first off, to fill out a little speaker card, and I'll try to call your name up. I'm sorry. My name usually gets murdered, so sorry if I murder yours. I've lived with it all my life. We do have a few ground rules. You have 3 minutes. It's for your comments, your concerns. It's not a debate. It's not a question and answer. So please formulate your comments as such. If you agree with someone that has just spoken, you can just say, I agree with that person. And then we'll move on. We want to be respectful of everyone here. We are all your neighbors, so we care too. Okay, so with that said, Mr. Mosheri. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Tringali. If you want to please give us a brief overview.
Sounds good. I'm not sure how brief, but I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mia, I think you have to turn your microphone on.
At the bottom.
At the bottom.
Dominic.
And, excuse me, 1 second. So do we need a motion to open the public hearing?
No, I would have the presentation first, and then
And-
open the public hearing just for the public
Thank you.
comments after that.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr.
Great.
Tringali.
No, thank you. Actually, I'm excited to be here tonight. I think I've met some of you already in the pre-meeting, which is great. So I do have a brief overview, but I think it's a little extensive, so that way we really have an understanding of what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish, especially hearing some of the questions that we had. I wasn't able to give all the details. So on the map that you see in front of you, and our 3 projects, and the pointer, yep, is working. So the 3 projects, the first one is the marina site, which we call Starborg. The middle one is called Constellation Bay, which is at the corner of Atwater and Broadway. And then the last one is Mystic Cove. And Mystic Cove is at the corner of Heights and Broadway with a small section that wraps all the way around just before Snug Harbor. Also, what's a little confusing is the corner of Mystic and Broadway is not part of this project. So basically, that's for a future use, not part of our property, and a separate development that's going in as a retail. So with that as mind, a little understanding of what we're having to do here tonight. We're going in for site plan approval on Constellation Bay. Actually, hold on one second here. Actually, you know what? I think I'm in the wrong PowerPoint. Yeah, overview. There we go. Okay. So basically, this is the same map that you just saw. And then here's what we're doing tonight. On Starborg, as an overview, we are having 40 residents that are going to be rental units. We're applying for a PUD approval based on the June 6th meeting with the City Council, where it met all 5 PUD requirements for eligibility. The second project in the middle, Constellation Bay, which is at Atwater and Broadway, that has 52 residents, and we're going in for site plan approval. It meets all the height, density, and it meets all the setback requirements. Mystic Cove, we are also going in for site plan approval. It's basically at Heights and Broadway, as I mentioned. It's 47 units, and we're applying for site plan approval again. It meets all the height, density again. We've had some questions on overall phasing of the project. It's probably going to be about 2 to 6 years. We'd be starting with Mystic Cove, which is at the bottom, and working our way north from there. The marina has been purchased by Mosheri. Scott Campbell will operate it for the next 2 to 3 years. So Mosheri is actually officially Lake Orion residents. Both the lighthouse and the marina are now owned by them. So the developments have gone through some adjustments, and I want to point that out to clarify some of the things that we've seen. Each community is separate, but yet it actually is interconnected, and I have a little story with each one of them. The revisions that we had made on Starboard, we reduced it to 52 originally at one time, maybe at 56, down to 40. Constellation Bay, we reduced it down to a 4-story on the water. There used to be, we reduced it from a 4-story to a 3-story that was on the water. And then on Mystic Cove, we actually reworked the site plan a little bit with new entrance locations and a view shed. And then on all 3 of them, you're going to see tonight what we incorporated as far as new park areas and historical tributes. So all 3 site plans are here. I'm going to go into much more detail as it progresses. This is just a very quick overview. I'll start here with Mystic Cove. We actually have a view shed that we've added that has a connection to the lake. We plan on keeping the shoreline as natural as we possibly can. This is the corner I mentioned to you that's actually not part of our project. There's about 10 cabins on that. That's not included in what we're doing. But we think it might be great if we could get involved and get a group involved to actually save one of the cottages as a historic tribute. We're going to clean up and renovate the docks over through here. And this development is a total of 47 units. And we have 11 units that are live-work units that are faced on Broadway here. These buildings are 3 stories. They're not too dominating because they're only about 100 feet long on this one, and this one's about 120. Another overview for Constellation Bay, some of the highlights that we have. Basically, there was an entrance there at one time. It's now removed, and it's actually a park area. The distance of that park area is twice as much as the view shed as it is now. Right now, there's about 20 feet between the buildings. We've opened it up to 42 feet, and it narrows down between these buildings here. But this is going to become a pedestrian walkway, a little park area, and then I'll get into detail a little bit more of the historic tribute to Park Island and the amusement park and the entrance sign that was actually at Greens Park as you entered, towards the island. We're also going to talk a little bit later tonight about the historic home that we're going to recreate. It's 312 Broadway that has some unique history to it that I, as doing my research, kind of stuck out to me. So we're going to recreate that on the corner. And to orientate yourself, there's 2 Italianate houses. The other one is the law office. And then right next to that, we'll be reconstructing this one. This image here is that new Atwater Park area through here. And then we're also creating a boardwalk that actually can have public access where you can get to the boardwalk, walk down to the new Boathouse restaurant. That's not part of our project. That's already planned, though, to go in that location. And finally, the last map here, and hopefully you guys can all see it. I know they're a little small. They'll be bigger as we go later down the road. This is the new redevelopment for the marina site. So this is a 3-story building with a 4th story of parking underneath, and it's 22 units. We have units planned along here on Flint Streets, and there's basically 6 units there that we have that match the old cottages that I'll show you. We're keeping the existing Sutherland house that's here, and then once that life estate has gone through, we'll renovate that. We're also keeping the old boathouse here, and the intent is to open up the whole boardwalk and marina and access to the public, as well as redeveloping the peninsula here. We are going to keep the gas dock. We are going to revamp that and revamp it into the snack shop and develop that area as well. Another big feature that I'll talk about a little bit later is this view shed that we created. So we opened up Greens Park, and we opened up that connection to Greens Park through here so that you see it much more on Broadway. This park will remain our property, but we'll maintain it and try to work with Parks and Rec to come up with a nice kind of connection between the two. Now, as far as inspirations, these are some inspirations on Mystic Cove, which will be kind of the shake style that I'll show you the elevations, get into a little bit more detail on. But each one, like I told you, is connected, but yet a little bit different. For Constellation is this cottage style type of look. We have some units too that are going to be unique. They're carriage house units that are above garages, just like these lower pictures that you see here. And then finally, just some inspirations for a harbor feeling that we're doing at Starboard. So with some bracket details, some work that we have in the architecture here. I've done a lot of history, a lot of research on these. I'm excited to show you those as we talk a little bit more. Interesting, as I did some research on Lake Orion, it is full and rich of history. As some of you may know that, I did not come new into this. But basically, in 1829, they built that sawmill, dammed up Paint Creek, 6 small lakes became one. In 1873, they raised it 12 feet to create Lake Orion as it was now. And then from there, the railroad came in. 1872, kind of interesting. What caught my eye on this is not everybody wanted progress as you came to Lake Orion. So basically, there's a guy down here, I highlighted, E.R. Emmons, basically owned a mill, and he threatened to fire a cannon to anybody who wanted to lay railroad tracks. Not everybody wanted progress. The cannon happened to be missing from the historic site that it was at. So it was interesting that back then, and thank God there's no cannon now, but back then there were people who didn't want progress either. So that kind of leads to where Lake Orion started, which basically, I didn't know this, was started as a rental community. So started out as rental cottages as that railroad track came in. And then I started digging deeper, because as an architect, that's what I do. So if you haven't read this Time Tracks by Jim Ingram, he did a phenomenal job of documenting the history. It's all at the Orion Libraries where I did a lot of it. They have a whole section that's basically on Lake Orion. Another thing is I met some great local residents, gave me some great history, not only from Scott Campbell, but from Jeff Sutherland, who's a wealth of information, but also, and I'm not sure if he's here tonight, but Dr. Master Mateo. He owned 312 Broadway, 88 years old, came to my office, drove there himself, knew how to use an iPhone, and was full of great history. Got a lot of information as well from him that we incorporated in here. So what I found out with not only meeting those people, but I was also at the Dragon of the Lake Festival, which was great. You know, everybody in Lake Orion loves their town. You guys just love it. I've also found out that everybody has an opinion, and none of the opinions match each other. I also found out that some people have their own personal interests that they're involved in. So it's challenging to create a project that everybody's going to like. All I'd like you to do tonight is be open, understand what effort I put forth on this, kind of the history we incorporated, and what we're trying to do here. So throughout this whole time, I met with several people. We met with the DDA, we met with Lola, which was great. Also met with individual people. So I had one guy come in my office, it was pretty interesting. He was really concerned about Mystic Cove. I don't know if he's here tonight, but anyway, he was great. He didn't like the architecture, didn't like the buildings, thought they needed to be too far apart. And then we left to some degree with his comment was, basically, you know, this is going to change the whole look of the town and going to change all of the shoreline of Lake Orion. And then I come to find out he lived on Park Island, which was interesting in itself. But as we all know, in Lake Orion, if you buy a lot, as long as you meet the side yards, the front yards, and those things, you can build what you want. The architecture, whether it's contemporary or modern or whatever, it doesn't matter as long as you're within those ordinance, those height requirements. So as I was doing some other research, what was pretty interesting, 1964, Bill Davis buys Park Island, because it went bankrupt in the 50s, leveled the whole thing, and the headlines were, this is going to change the whole lakeshore of Lake Orion. It's going to change everything. That was in 1964. I'm sure there's people here from Park Island, and you guys are now the fabric of the community. So back then, the demolition and the killing of all the trees, the flattening of Park Island, that was the big story. They actually filled in part of the lake at that time too. But basically, they are now an integral fabric of this community. And we're hoping that our communities will be that as well too. Now, a quick little overview, because on social media, I found there's a lot of experts. There's people who know about traffic, there's people who know about planning. So basically, I thought I'd do a quick rundown of the false things I've heard on it. So somebody puts up this Facebook post, says, "Save Historic Lake Orion." Well, that's interesting. When I looked at the photograph, that's all gone. That was basically in 1916. So that had nothing to do with us. So we're not doing any 4-stories along M24. There was some post along that. The only 4-story that we're proposing, which I'll show you a little bit later, is at the corner of M24 and Flint Street where the marina is. All the rest of the sites are within the ordinance and are 3 stories. Snug Harbor is not part of our development. These are luxury rental units, 1,300 to 3,000 square feet. I saw somewhere that this might be riffraff apartments. Believe me, if you go on Masheri's website and the work that we do, they're not riffraff apartments. These are high-end luxury homes that fit into the communities that we're trying to create. We're not doing Italian restaurant part of this. I read that. There's no backroom deals. So basically, we're going through the process with the city like we do with all cities. We've been working on this for probably 6 months, have meetings with the cities for 4 months. We meet with the DWP, we meet with the planning department. This is not uncommon. There's nothing that we've done on this that is fishy smelling by any means. We try to do this because they're your representatives. We meet with your representatives and try to incorporate what works for the site and what we're doing. There's a study about the historical homes. So I want to go over that a little bit later because that's really critical. This was done in 2006, 2008, lists all the homes that are in Lake Orion, what's historical and what's not. Total number of units is 139. I read somewhere there was 400. It's not. So each one is a small community that together create 129 luxury rentals. We are not adding any more docks on all the properties. I'll show you what we're doing there. Masheri keeps the community they build. I read somewhere that they're carpetbaggers and that we sell the property afterwards. That's not true either. We're keeping the gas docks and the snack shop. The corner I mentioned before of Heights and Broadway is not our development. And the last big one is Masheri does not own a sausage factory. So I read somewhere that they did. They actually started in produce is what they did. So, okay. To wrap this a little closer to what we're talking about. Property's been for sale since 2015. No one's purchased it. No developer, no remodeler, no decorator, no nothing has looked at this property since then. Our proposal is within the current zoning, and basically, I was explaining to people earlier, this is zoned MU. If this MU zoning is used to its maximum capacity, if they put in a Jimmy John's or a pizza place or whatever, then that's going to create a lot more congestion and a lot more traffic than what we're proposing. On that list of items, what this MU can use of, our use is the least, and it makes the best use for the property at the same time. So the Lake Orion Review 2015, I thought this was important, so I'm just going to read this to you. The areas that were sold are zoned for multi-use, which could mature into both residential and commercial developments. Snyder hopes that these properties evolve into establishments that take advantage of the lakefront and can utilize the beauty of the lake. We have a wonderful asset in the lake. It's a tremendously underutilized area, and it sets us apart from everyone else, he said. A lot of people don't like to see change, but the reality is if we didn't have change, we'd all be riding in horse and buggies. So that was in 2015. And since then, no one has came up with any viable proposals for these sites except for us, because we were fortunate enough to accumulate all the pieces. Finally, the last overview, and I know this is longer, but I think this is important. So on that August 1st meeting, we didn't get a chance to present, but everyone else came in and talked about their comments. Those are my notes. 38 of them is what you guys had. We listened to them. We made some adjustments. But realistically, out of 38, it ends up to be 5 major concerns that you have. And I'm going to cover those now, so that way when you see the rest of the project, you'll understand better where we're coming from. someone asked me why these rentals, why this? Well, basically, overall, if you look at the National Realtors Association, there's a housing shortage in the next 5 years, about 5.2 million. There's also a shift in the market. The millennials don't like to own homes. They like to rent luxury products, and basically they can't change their own toilet, so they like everybody to do everything else. So millennials rent, they do not buy. There's other people who sell their big house and they want a nice luxury community, which is what we provide. And the statistics show that most people, about in 2017, 29% of them could actually afford to rent a house or buy a house, but they chose to rent. Now that number in 2000 has jumped up to 49%. They choose to rent, especially in some of our communities. We have $1 million clubhouses and pools that people can use. Here, the lake is our asset, so the lake is as important to you as it is to us. So that's why we think this fits a need. If you look at your master plan and then listen to your planner says this actually fits it. We have a wide variety of product. We have carriage units that are anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 to 2,800 square foot units to 3,000 square foot unit. We have a huge mix of product for a diverse character of people that can come in here. Next question, big question, is about the boats. So Lola came to us, I think about 8 or 9 guys came. They had a list of 25 different questions and concerns. I thought it was a very productive meeting. We showed them our intent, showed them what we wanted to do, and we went over the various things. So lake quality for us is as important as you. Understand something, right now, all of these properties have been older, they're about 50 years old. They all drain directly into the lake. So on our developments, because not only is modern times come about, but we also have requirements from engineering, we're creating a drainage system. So that drainage system, all the water goes to that, then it goes to swirl chambers, and before it goes back into the lake, it's cleaner than what has happened before. That's not happening on your current sites right now. So what we're doing to these sites and what we will be doing will actually improve the lake quality, in our opinion, and basically it'll help what's currently a bad situation now. So we're also hopefully going to be able to control the boat traffic, and on our property, we'll be doing that for sure. So not every residence will get a boat slip. We have about 100 units on the water, and we're going to have we're purchasing 56 docks as of right now and about 115 boat slips. And I'll get into that a little bit more of how we came up with that calculation, but that's what we're purchasing. We plan on keeping that same amount. We don't plan on adding anything. We plan on having those units that are on the water have first choice, and then if they don't take it, then we'll move on to the units that have off the water. So we want the boat traffic to be controlled. We think we can control it. You're going to have one person in charge of all those docks and all those boats rather than so many others, 115 separate people doing their own thing. And because of how we manage, and we've been professionally managing for years now, we're going to keep a good handle on that, keep the traffic to where it needs to be, and actually, we think, help that whole situation. As far as the capacity issues on the sewers and all that, that's all done through engineering. That'll be worked out back and forth through your engineering department and our consultants, and that'll be lived up so that way it doesn't cause any extra burden, and it actually has a better situation. If we need to improve things, we do that as well. So once again, we're not adding any boat slips. The boat slips are for the residents only. There's no rentals, there's no party boats, there's no outdoor storage or boat or trailer or RV storage on our properties. We also are purchasing 2 launches that we'll talk about. We plan on keeping those for our resident only and then opening it up as a community benefit to other residents who live on the lake for seasonal, putting the boats in and out only. That way it'll help reduce the congestion maybe at the DNR. So it's something that we would make and work together as a community on those 2 sites. Traffic, that was a really big one. So traffic, once again, I've seen on Facebook that there's all these people who are traffic consultant specialists. Basically, this is done by a registered professional company. They work with MDOT. MDOT has rules of when to do it. You can't do it on a Friday. You have to do it on a Monday through a Thursday. They have certain rules and requirements that you have to go by. We don't set those. MDOT sets those. Overall, here's what is really a true fact. M24 is busy. It's congested. No question about it. But if you look at the traffic study, at the end of the day, when you take all 3 of our sites, combine them together, our impact on traffic is only going to be 2.4%. Because of what I told you earlier, on that whole formula scale of MU usage, we are the least amount of usage. Residential live-work environment is the least amount. People are staying home more because of COVID. They don't have to go to work. So basically, our impact is going to be a minimum on those sites if they were developed in the manner that we choose it. There's less trips. There's 63% less traffic on Mystic Cove. Also, I'll get into details of the things that MDOT is suggesting that we improve on. And I'll do that a little bit more specifically as we get into each one. And finally, this one's kind of important because I've seen a lot of stuff on Facebook on that. So back in January, the first thing we did when we bought the property is called this Historical Society. Go online, find out about those units and those residential properties that are there. So basically, I'll read some of this to you that's highlighted. In October 2006, Charter Township of Orion contacted with Manick and Smith Group, who conducted a reconnaissance level survey of 200 of the most significant, well-preserved historic resources in the township. The goal of this project was to create a permanent record of history properties in Orion and serve as a baseline for future planning, preservation, compliance, and public education. As an architect, that's what we do first. So that report's been there, and it was started in 2006, completed in 2008. That's all I can go by. I go by the records. Just because you kissed your first boyfriend at a certain house doesn't make it historical, I'm afraid, okay? May have local value, but I have to go to this report. So reading a little bit more on this report is very interesting. The object of the survey was to identify the most significant, well-preserved properties in Orion Township over the last 50 years. Second part, out of the 197 properties identified and evaluated in this survey, 3 were previously listed by the State Natural Registry, and 151 are recommended as not eligible. 4 are recommended for additional study, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, this part is important. The property is eligible for listing in the National Registry. To qualify for the listing in the National Registry, the property must typically be 50 years old, must demonstrate architectural and historic or collateral significance, and must remain in sufficient physical integrity to convey the specific sense of time and place. Of the 197 surveyed, most were deemed to be not eligible. In the back of this report, it lists the properties, and it says right on there, eligible or not eligible. Since this report was done, nobody has done nothing. Some of our properties are abandoned even further. In more decay, they probably wouldn't even be eligible. So we did look at the history. We did look at what's there. And I think you'll find through the other presentations, what I'll show you is we're trying to do some what we call historic tributes to try to remember the history the best we can, even though the properties themselves are basically have been abandoned and decayed and not in the proper manner. So once again, each property is basically interconnected, yet they're separate. I'm excited to tell you the more details that we have, but the history I did is fascinating. You need to understand something. The Italian heritage goes deep in Lake Orion. This section you want to read here. Listen to this here. Okay, this is important. So basically, the carousel, basically $12,000 a carousel cost, purchased in 1915. Basically, Vincent Borlandi, standing in the middle of the carousel, was Italian. He allowed only Italian opera music to be played during the time the carousel was played. And I dug deeper. By the Thriller roller coaster, he had an Italian sausage vending machine. Just amazing. That's my presentation as an overview. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you again. And again, to reiterate, this is, we're going to be opening the public hearing here shortly, and it's your opportunity for your comments. I'm sorry, Mr.
This will be just 30 seconds, Mr.
Sure,
Chairman.
please.
Thank you for this time and Mr. Tringali doing that introduction. First and foremost, don't take our words for any of this. The village of Lake Orion has professional consultants, and the zoning ordinance is in place and the master plan. And for us to say that we comply with the master plan and zoning ordinance is very hollow and shallow. Rely on your consultants and your planning commission members and village council members to help enact these ordinances and keep them up to date in the master plan. Now, for my 2 cents, We fully comply with the master plan. I think we exceed expectations. It's just all a lot at one time, and we understand that. We understand the consternation. We understand it's a lot of change. We believe it's change for the positive, but we're not going to bleed this out for years and years. And that's what would happen because of the dozens of properties that were assembled. You'd have dozens of different proposals. You have a unified control, and I don't mean control in a negative sense, but in a way that will meet your ordinances and reflect the goals and objectives of the village. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so to continue on, we're going to open the public hearing, and current time is 8:02. And again, ground rules, 3 minutes. It's not a debate, not question and answer. Please let us hear your comments, concerns, opinions. And again, I will try my best on names and addresses. Oh, and there's one time only, so has everyone had a chance to fill out a card that would like to speak? If not, please just raise your hand. Okay, so everyone has had a chance, opportunity. Okay, so 8:02, opening the public hearing. We'll start with Stephen Dracos.
Good evening, sir. My name is Stephen Dracos, a business owner on the community. The address for the record is 334 South Broadway Street. I want to, first of all, thank the president, the entire commission, Mr. Sable, and so many of you, city attorney, for all your hard work in this matter. Thank the presenter today. I'm here basically to make a few comments, and I'll keep it very short. First of all, whether you're for this or against it, I'm very proud to indicate, just by personal experience in the last few months, that you do have a developer, or we do in our community, that's very well respected throughout the state of Michigan, throughout the country. Unfortunately, there's been others throughout the history of our community who have tried
That's your bailiwick.
I could help out with something there.
Did you get him straight?
Why don't we have the next person?
Yeah, so Robert, you'll be next. Robert, you'll be next. Yeah.
Nobody else tells you this tonight. He's the first speaker.
No, Robert.
Robert.
After Dominic's done, right?
Yeah. So we were just letting Robert know that he's going to be next. So
Behind
we're-
you.
Yeah.
Is Dominic done?
I thought he was.
Mr. Chair, can you hear, is the mic working?
Yeah, so I'm going to resume the meeting. So we are going to resume at 8:15. I'm sorry,
No, I was
Mr.
just going to clarify, the feed is working now?
It is,
Thank
it
you.
is. So our second comment?
Okay, of course, Robert Reard, 328 South Broadway. Past member of this board. First, I want to say it was an honor to sit on this board for past and present members that I got to sit on it with. The reason why I actually resigned from this board was because I wanted to be able to have my statement about what I felt about this Mosheri project, and I couldn't do it because the project is right next to me. So anyway, I probably should have done this before I even did my project, because there's a lot of people thinking I got some favoritism. But anyway, my comment is we all have a vision for these properties, okay? But we've had 20 years or more to do something about it, and we didn't. So, and truthfully, when you look at it, if I'm sitting on this board too, you're being very lucky that he's just putting residential in here, because he could put commercial in there. You want to see traffic, you see traffic. I also want to tell you that, you know, I sit on this board when the EMIN people came in, and this was the same thing, oh, traffic, traffic, traffic. Now, I'm not into all these studies and all that stuff, because to me that means nothing. But I took my time and I went over to Orion Cove, and I would sit there at different times of the day to see how much traffic, since that's probably the biggest apartment unit around here, how much it affected. Hardly none. So this traffic stuff, that's just a bunch of crap, and something's going to go there regardless. But anyway, as I drove around too, is people complain about too much boat traffic. But, you know, we have an ordinance here that you only allow the boat that's in your name at your house. You're not allowed to rent your docks out or have your buddy come there and park their boat. So if you complain about boat traffic, I'm just telling you, if you don't like the ordinance, ask it to be changed, but that's the true ordinance for this community. Okay, so anyway, I'm just telling you that we're the most affected house in this whole project, okay? It sits next to us, it sits behind us. So if we're okay with it, and we're the most affected, I'm not sure why anybody else would really have such a big issue with it. Everybody wants everybody wants, you know, like I say, to be able to tell somebody else what they could build on their property, but they certainly don't want the same thing back. I also sat on the BZA board, and I don't know how many times people come in and wanted to take their property closer to the lake and this and that, okay? And yet, here's a guy who's coming in trying to stay with all the boundaries, and we got people that are having a conniption fit about it. So I'm just telling you that my family is glad to see this project. Glad to see the hotel and that go. I got a 14-year-old granddaughter. I don't need that kind of stuff back behind me. And I can tell you that from a source that in 6 months there were 30 calls to the hotel, and most of them were for medical reasons like overdoses and things like that. Thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me to sit on that board.
Thank you. Teresa Scherf, 468 South Broadway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My main concern is for the planet Earth itself, because with all the different pollution problems, the main thing, there's one thing that the Earth needs the most, and we need also, and that's something that breathes out oxygen. And the only thing I know of that breathes out oxygen are large trees. So I'm asking that whether these 1 or 2 or 3 of these or none of these get approved, that we have lots of large trees giving out oxygen for us and for the Earth. That's my comment.
Thank you. Henry Stevens, 310 North Shore, or I'm sorry, 311 North Shore.
Long way from
Yeah,
the back
right.
of the room.
Thanks. Thank
Harry
you.
Stephen, 311 North Shore. Just a few things that I just wanted to point out. I went back and looked at the censuses of Lake Orion. In 1860, there were 292 residents in the village. In 60 years, or 100 years, it moved all the way up to 2,700. The largest population was in 1990, in which was 3,057 residents. 2010, it was 2973, and 2020, 2876. So the actual population of the village is reducing, not growing. The area of the township is growing, the population out there, but we are landlocked. We have a certain amount of area, which represents about 0.8 of 1 square mile. The lake represents about 0.5 square miles, for a total of 1.3. The population density of the village of Lake Orion is 37 people per square mile, taking our population to that 0.8. The average density in a village in the state of Michigan is 2206. So the density that we have in our village right now is actually higher than what the norm is in the state of Michigan. I was involved in a traffic study in the village for the M24 corridor from the Palace all the way to Lapeer County. At that particular time, the traffic flow was about 25 to 26,000 cars per day on the arterial element of M24. Mosheri is telling us that we're going to have approximately 40,000. That represents a 57% increase in traffic up and down the arterial, not necessarily the village, but people going through the village, which impacts us. I think that's basically what I was concerned about, is that we are not really in a growth community. We have a finite area in which density is a problem, and we're going to be enhancing that density. Thank you.
Thank you. We could. So I'll announce that it's Lori Pesci, 95 North Axford. I'll be our next speaker, and then followed by Mary Jo D'Onofrio, 249 Park Island. So if you just make your way to the podium so we don't have to wait so long. Thank you. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. So Ms. Pesci, thank you.
Yes, Lori Pesci, 95 North Axford. We are all gathered tonight because we are concerned with the numerous multifamily developments that are being proposed for our community. There are already 2 approved on Elizabeth Street, which will add 105 residences. I assume the one at the roundabout was rejected. I don't know what is currently happening with the lumberyard proposal. And now we have the 3 we are addressing tonight, which for many of us was new information just last month at the August 1st meeting. The 3 developments in question have a total of 139 residences, Then when you add the 105 residences on Elizabeth Street, that gives us a total of 244 additional residences in our community. Now, if you think about it in terms of people, if there are 2 adults in each residence, and let's say just 1 child in half of the residences, that's approximately 600 people. That's a lot of people. Our current population is about 3,000. So that's a 20% increase in population in our small community in a short amount of time. So I think that's why everybody's like up in arms. It just seems like a lot. You know, it's not just this developer, you know, it's in addition to the other developments that we have as well. And then also, Lake Orion is the 6th largest all-sports lake in Oakland County. The Moschery developments would remove the marina, and that means everybody that owns a boat has to transport their boats out of the community for maintenance or repairs or for winterizing. So I really think we need a marina, so it'd be nice if they would build a state-of-the-art marina where the existing one is. And I also wanted to just address the fact that the rental units, and I know that home ownership is a desired lifestyle. I know he was saying he thought a lot of people would rather rent. You know, my adult children would be considered millennials, and they all are buying a house. So I think it would be nice if some of them were ownership, you know, if they want to do condos or even luxury homes on the lake, you know, instead of all of it being rentals. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Beringer, 744 King Circle will be on deck. Mrs. D'Onofrio?
Hi,
Thank you.
Mary Jo D'Onofrio, 249 Park Island. I've lived on the lake my entire life. I've lived on Park Island for 36 years, and I also own my childhood home, which is in the township on the other side of the lake. I'd like to say that my husband and I are in support of the Moschery project. When we first heard of this project, we, like many, questioned what it would do to the boat traffic on the lake. We now understand that the boat docks, which will not be increasing, will only be allowed to be used by residents of the project. We welcome that, as I think there is way too much unregulated boat dockage and rentals on our lake, which leads to the increased traffic that we all complain about. I believe that a project by the Tringali Moschery team would elevate our community to a new level. Their reputation speaks for itself. We have seen what the addition and improvement of many restaurants and businesses in our village, like Wine Social, Bitter Tom's, Oat Soda, Fork and Pint, Motor City Granite, Broadway Embroidery, 20 Front Street, have done for our village. We also need to prepare for what's going to become of the large commercial properties of Lake Orion Lumber, the Eamon Center, and Jacobson's down the road. We feel it's time to let go of some of the old, unimproved, deteriorating aspects of our village and welcome new ideas and those who want to invest in our community and help move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Zader, 7 North Shore.
Good evening. I hope we can have a constructive meeting today and exchange ideas. I'm kind of surprised that you guys don't answer questions, but so many folks want a quaint town where Lake Orion is living a vacation. So all the concrete, the brick, the asphalt, that really doesn't keep with the character of our town. At the last meeting, I mentioned that the 4th of July weekend, there was approximately 250, 300 boats on the sandbar, totally out of control, totally unsafe. I've been checking with the village. The village has $3,500 budgeted for police managing the police or the patrol, and they only used half their budget. So they had 116 hours allocated, they only used 58. So we need to use what we've budgeted already. The township has $9,000 budgeted. They only used half. So we need to investigate the system on how police officers are assigned to the lake because it's very unsafe out there. Just wanted to know, where are all these apartments getting their electrical from? I don't think the township and the village, I think they do have issues already with electrical. So I didn't see in the engineering plans source of energy, source of electric. So it's an open issue. The gentleman that kicked off our meeting today talked about 1964 Park Island. They finally built there. What'd they build? Single-family homes. I don't think most of these people would have an issue if you built 20 single-family homes on Lake Orion. We don't need 148 condos. 20 homes would mean 20 more boats, 60 people, not 148 residents and 450 people. Do the math. It's going to impact the traffic and the lake traffic by 20%. I'm not familiar with all you guys up here and gals. Just wondered who's running for re-election in November. Anybody? Can they raise their hand? Nobody? Okay, let the minutes show that Ken Van Portleaf is running for re-election. There's a lot of questions, okay? You guys popped this on us a month ago.
So thank you. That's your 3 minutes.
We ask that you do not vote today. You haven't given us enough info. Thank you.
Thank you. And then on deck is Corinne Zader.
I'm Matt
Mr. Zader.
Shader from 7 North Shore. So the current zoning for the Starboard development is mixed use, and the Darling Cottage and Peninsula is residential lake. And I haven't heard, I would think that you would need to rezone that to a mixed use because you have building 6, 7, 8, and the snack shop is going to be on there. I think a lot of people have overlooked the floodplain. When you look at the floodplain map for Lake Orion, you see the development area for the Starboard, which is designated by FEMA, is directly in Zone AE, which is classified as a special flood hazard area. And this area has limited development potential because of its potential to flood, and development in this area is often restricted. Also with the MU, for the PUD, it does have to follow off-street parking. The plan right now only shows 17 off-site spaces. Only single-family residents can include driveways and garages as off-street parking. The plan would require 80 off-street spaces. And also the MU requires handicap parking. I haven't seen any handicap parking in there. They're going to have a total of 111 parking spaces, and the table, which is table 14.03, for 101 to 150 parking spaces, there should be 5 handicap spaces. And everyone's talking about the master plan. So the future land use map for the village master plan, the multiple family residential in the village master plan, they strategically outline the areas that are recommended for multifamily residential use. These areas include the northeast corner of the village, north of Flint Street, along Orion Road, north of Atwater, north of Pink Creek between Washington and Slater, and the southeast corner of Jackson and Lapeer, and between Church and Elizabeth Street, just west of the Eamon Center. Nowhere in the master plan does it recommend the areas which is designated as Starboard, Mystic Cove, and Constellation Bay. For the mixed use, there's three areas, mixed use A, B, and C. These areas will be where the Starboard, Mystic Cove, and Constellation developments will be located. The master plan emphasizes these areas be used for office and single-family homes. Any new development should fit into existing use of the area and should not overwhelm existing development in scale and mass. Most of the current district is single-family homes. Thank you.
Corinne Zader.
watching the live stream, they can't see whoever's speaking. It's pointed like.
Yeah, they could only get one camera on the live stream. They have a technical issue, and so we wanted to have the meeting up. The microphone is on the live stream. So they're trying to work on it, but I'm trying to run a meeting, so. So Corinne Zader, did you say you're good?
I'm all good.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Sue Albert, 228 South Broadway. And then on deck will be Tom Albert, 228 South Broadway.
Hello, Planning Commission.
Hello.
So there's a lot of people here tonight, and I hope that you're listening to what we have to say. And so this is covering both the starboard and the Constellation. So I feel that there's too dense of a development adjacent to the single-family neighborhood, and it's going to be blocking a lot of their view. It's going to be interfering with that whole neighborhood and the getting in and out, the traffic approaching to Lapeer Road. Also, I was really surprised. I came early and I listened to the presentation in the other room, and when the PUD development, the area where the marine building is now, it's like 4 stories. It was huge, and it was going from, I was like, how much area is that? He's like, well, that's from Flint Street to the park. And it's a huge development. It's 4 stories. There's parking underneath with 3 stories on top. It's really hard to comprehend that that's fitting in that area. And on the drawing, I mean, you're seeing green space, but what you're seeing is the park. You're seeing our park that has a green space. So I know that you listen. I know the Surrey listens. I think they do some beautiful developments, and I hope that they listen, that we just feel this is too big a development for our town. And, single-family homes, or even if they could cut it in half, I think it would be a lot better, more of an asset for a community. The height and the scale of the buildings don't fit in with the surrounding neighborhoods. And there are natural areas, even though with the consultants saying, we don't have natural areas. Well, if you look where Darling Cottage is, and if you look at Mystic Cove, there's trees, there's greenery, and I think we need to look at preserving that and adding green space. Lake Orion also is home to the blue heron and swans, and I think it's important to have some natural habitat for them. So, and then my other question was, with the docks and the boat traffic, they're like, well, we're not adding more boats and we're not adding more dock traffic. It's like things are being juggled around. So I'm really have some questions about that. So thank you for letting me talk tonight, and I'm just really concerned about the size and the traffic and boat concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Albert, and then followed by Breanne Murphy, 48 Smith Court.
Good evening. Tom Albert, 228 South Broadway. She kind of stole a lot of what I was going to say, but anyway. I've been a resident here for over 40 years. I've been on this board and the council and everything. I went through a couple of projects, and all I know is that over this time, the residents have been pretty clear they don't want they didn't want multiple residents on the condos or anything on the lake. We've had various surveys and studies through that time, and that's what they've come up with. As far as this PUD goes, I don't believe that they've, I looked at the substantial benefits that were supposed to happen. I think they're just mainly amenities for the marina, the starboard PUD. The only thing, but there is one thing that is a benefit, and that's going to be the public boardwalk, so I guess that's a plus. But going to the starboard, it's too dense of a development adjacent to a single-family neighborhood, which kind of goes against a PUD. You heard it, the view shed of the surrounding neighborhood is going to be blocked by this development. The height, scale, and character of the buildings don't fit in with the surrounding neighborhood. Let's see, setback. Oh, and you're going to have to explain the setbacks from the water to the those units on the water, because it's 6 to 12 feet, and I believe it's supposed to be a 25-foot setback. Another problem I saw was this traffic issue at the Constellation. I don't know how people are going to make a left turn out of that drive, or a right for that matter, with the traffic coming out of Atwater there heading south with the 2 lanes. And I feel sorry for the people on Park Island that are, and that Park Road, they have a trouble now getting out of there. They're really going to have problems when this thing is done. So, I don't know, this thing, you're going to look along M24, the historical character of the village is going to be gone. And, I don't know. I think you're going to have to ask them to either deny it, and if they come back for direction, say, reduce the size of these developments and give us something that's more palatable. So, thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Murphy, and followed by Kathy Leich, 659 King Circle.
Hi, I'm Brianne Murphy, and you're the only person who has never butchered my name, so thank you. I grew up in Lake Orion on Mabee Road. I went to college in Chicago, then moved to LA, and now I'm back here. And I am one of those millennials that he talked about, and I bought a house in Lake Orion. And it's one of those things where most people that I know want, millennials are nostalgic in nature. We want houses. My house is made in the 1930s, and I wanted that historic feel. I wanted something to feel like home, and when people rent, they don't feel like home. It is a stepping stone to something else. It is a stepping stone to buying a house. I don't know anyone that is comfortable renting for a long time unless you're in a big city, and this is not a big city. This is a home. This is safe. You know, more people cause, you know, crime or anything. You know, this is why I moved back here, is because it was safe. I can walk my dogs at night and feel safe. I'm not afraid. I'm not scared. And I know that everyone around me will help me and take care of me, because this is a really nice community, and adding so many more people and so many more places, it's rough, you know, and I, if anything, save the Darling Cottage or anything, because I think it's beautiful and it really represents like what used to be, you know. Adding something that's large and extensive doesn't really make it feel like home here. Thank you.
Thank you. So Ms. Leich, and then followed by Brian Chacon, 9 Chamberlain.
Well, I have the same sentiments. I have a little house on Clare Street, which is down Lake, and I can't imagine a 4-story building at the end. It does break my heart, but I know that's going to be the sentiment of everyone. But my question is the boat or the gas dock. They say that they're going to keep the gas dock. You have to have an attendant at a gas dock, just like at Sam's Club and Costco. You have an attendant there. It's self-serve, but you have an attendant there. So who is going to pay for the attendant? You know, you have employer taxes, and you have to keep up the pumps, and you have to buy the fuel. Who is going to pay for that? Who's going to do that? And if we don't have that on the lake, one of my clients just bought a brand new pontoon boat. It's an 85-gallon tank. One of my clients sells boats, those surf boats. You can go through, I don't know how many gallons in 4 hours. So if we don't have a gas dock on this lake, what are we going to do? pull our boats out, take it to the gas station? You can't haul 85 gallons down the hill and put it in your boat. So who is going to monitor this? Who's going to maintain this? And are we going to have a gas dock? I keep hearing, it says right up there, going to have a gas dock and a snack shop. Well, who's going to pay for that person? That's my question.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Chacon, pass, oh, okay, and same with wife? You can fill a card out if you like. So, please. Sure. I understand, thank you. So for the record, just please state your name and address, please.
Matt Alf, 230 West Flint Street. Just to kind of reiterate what some of the other people have said, the 4-story building at the corner of Flint is, I know he mentioned that there's not going to be any 4-story buildings on M24, but in my opinion, and I think most people here, that sits on M24. I mean, we know that, right? So that's going to change the landscape of that neighborhood 100%. The entranceway, the view being blocked. Someone mentioned traffic and that sort of thing. But mostly, yeah, I think there's a lot of details that maybe haven't been looked at as well as they need to be. So if there's a way to give us some more time to do that, give you guys some more time. Someone else from our neighborhood brought up some good points about additional traffic for this project, additional parking spots. So those are things that I think are important, and I think that it would be important for you guys to take some more time to look at. A lot of us don't feel like, all that information's been covered, so that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Terry Sanoa, 1338 Heights, passing, thank you. Kirsten Barber, 441 Newton. And then that'll be followed by Jim Childers, 197 West Flint.
Hi there, Kirsten Barber, 441 Newton Drive. A couple notes I made when, sorry if it's Mr. Tringali or Dominic. He was commenting about, the traffic studies and things like that, and MDOT controls, when they do it and things like that. That's great, but I think this board needs to really request MDOT do a Friday survey during the school year. You did one in June after school was out. You did one in August before school started. They're not considering the traffic that heads up north on 24 every weekend. You can't ignore that. The other aspect to the traffic, you said we're only increasing at 2.4%. Okay, it could be worse, so cheer us on for only 2%. It's still an increase. It's still going to cause problems. It's still going to create more headache for the residents that live here. So I'm sorry, but 2.4% is not a positive thing in my mind. I believe he said as well that Starboard was going to be 4-story and he knocked it down to 3, and maybe I misunderstood, so please forgive me if I did. Okay, but are you doing 3 stories at 52 feet or whatever the height is versus, 4 stories at 52 feet? Let's not necessarily count stories. How tall are these buildings going to be? Again, with Constellation, it's not going to be 4 stories. It's only going to be 3. How tall are they going to be? Let's get that number, before we, pat ourselves on the back for dropping a story off these buildings. You're saying it's going to be 2 to 6 years to get this project done. I live off of Atwater. It is a nightmare to get off of that street and to get onto 24, to get my kids to school, to get to Costco, to get to the library. I don't need 2 to 6 more years of misery. I will move before I deal with that. So you'll lose residents based on this. I will say the boardwalk is very appealing to me. I appreciate that. But I'm only seeing foot traffic access, and crossing M24 is a nightmare, especially at Atwater. And the only solution I can come up with is a overhead cross that does not fit with our village. I think the one in Oxford is absolutely not eye-appealing at all. It's very disturbing visually, and I think if that's going to be the solution, or one of the possible solutions, it's not a good solution. You know, you stated that the lake is going to be our playground. We're not going to have this and that and the other thing. Well, I don't really get to use the lake as a playground because there isn't access to it, and I don't really feel that this is going to increase access to it. I feel adding another 600 people is going to reduce the desire to try to get to the lake. Getting to Greens Park is messy as it is. You add another apartment complex to it, it's going to be worse. The only positive I see on this is the boardwalk. And I'm sorry, but this is not the little quaint hometown feel that I wanted to raise my family in. This is not it. Please go back to the drawing board and come up with a better plan. Please do not approve this. Please do not vote on it tonight. Please. You have to listen to the people that put you in those seats. The people that put you in those seats do not want this.
Thank you very much.
Represent us.
Thank you very much.
Please do your duty.
Mr. Childers, and then followed by Nicole Desmond, 33 North Axford.
My name is Jim Childers. I live at 197 West Flint Street. I'm Jeff Sutherland's next door neighbor. We have been friends and good neighbors for a long time. We see this from opposite sides of the fence. We've had some heated discussions over it. It's a topic we can't talk about, but we are still good friends and good neighbors. It's just something we don't talk about. My property goes all the way down to Lake Street. I have a full lot. My backyard looks at Rod's Canvas Shop. My garage, the access is off of Lake Street. This will impact me fully and absolutely in a way that I don't want it to impact me. There's nothing I can say that hasn't already been said by any number of people here about the pros and cons of this. But West Flint Street, from the very first house behind the telephone shop there, all the way down on both sides to North Shore, there's 29 houses there. Now, granted, I'm comparing apples to oranges, but you got 29 houses down that whole street, and now you're wanting to put 40 houses at the front section of it. 40 homes, I'm sorry, not houses. If only they were houses. I'm sorry that this is what this has come to. I see this disrupting the serenity and peace and quiet of a residential neighborhood. Single-family homes. We do have 2 apartment buildings already. They are grandfathered in because they've been there since the day of creation, I think. But they fit the neighborhood. This will not fit this neighborhood. And I can't even imagine once it begins construction and the noise and all of that. All of that traffic from those new developments are going to be funneled onto Flint Street. I'm very fortunate. I'm retired. I don't have to get up and go to work every morning. I don't have to come home in it every night. But a whole lot of folks will, and this will impact them. And nobody's going to be happy about this except those people who are benefiting from it.
Thank you. And, excuse me, Adam Fodder, 33 North Axford, be next. Ms. Desmond.
My name is Nicole Desmond. I'm at 33 North Axford. I just wanted to thank the Planning Commission for, putting us together and hearing us out. Also, the Lake Orion Review for keeping the community informed, and all of my neighbors for showing up here tonight, because I think it's so important that we have our voices heard. In the August 31st issue of the Lake Orion Review, Mr. Tringali, the architect of this development, was quoted saying, "There is a need for housing in Lake Orion." But according to the U.S. Census Bureau, between 2011 and 2020, there have been an increase of 188 residents in our small town. And all of those residents currently have housing. So this development fulfills Mosheri and the architect's interests, not the residents, not the people that live here. They're creating a need. They're creating a need for their own gain. And the comment about millennials, I am on the beginning spectrum of millennials, so I'm more Gen X, but I'm still in that grouping that they're speaking of. We're homeowners. We own a home in the village. We're both millennials. And the comment that was made about millennials wanting to be homeowners, it's true. But we also have to face the fact that the baby boomers are aging out. And they're all going to start going into these giant facilities that are being built all over the township. And who's going to fill all of their homes when they go into nursing homes? Millennials. Another quote from the Lake Orion Review, Mosheri believes in moving forward while celebrating the past. And although we appreciate that marketed sentiment, we, the residents, love the village and feel it's perfect as is. It's also an insult to insinuate that we as a community are not moving forward in our own way. My biggest concern, and the reason why I'm here tonight, is the Starboard development. It's right in my neighborhood. It will affect me. 40 residences equal up to 80 additional cars. There is currently, that I know of, no plan to increase the capacity of the left turn lane from northbound M24 to westbound Flint Street. Any given night when I drive, I work hybrid, so I do go to the office. I'm not one of the lucky ones that get to work from home 24 hours a day. I do commute several days a week, and I sit on 24 to be able to get into that very tiny left turn lane that now exists at Flint Street. And that is my biggest concern, because that construction will impact my living there, the sounds and all of that, like everyone else has mentioned. But my ability to turn left on my way home, my drive's already wicked. And I had mentioned that previously, but that is my biggest concern. 40 residences, up to 80 cars. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. On deck will be Tony Dorda, 1191 Ridgeview Circle. Thank you. Then on deck will be Pat O'Day, 837 Pine Tree.
Good evening. My name is Adam Fodor, 33 North Axford. I feel like this meeting has a different feel and vibe to it than the previous one. The previous one seemed like everyone was concerned, and it was quickly blown off. We were told we were going to get answers as to how it got posted on all these social medias, on who screwed up the date, and I don't know if that's ever been addressed. But we can't ask questions tonight, so we'll never really know. With that being said, I'd like to get an understanding on how we're basing 2022 numbers in traffic and things on studies that were 4 and 5 years ago. As the lady spoke earlier, they do these studies on a Monday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, not Friday, not during school season. Everything changes. A 2% increase in traffic on paper seems small, but in reality, when you add 100 and something developments, 38 or 48 developments, times 2 cars, that's another almost 200 cars or better in traffic. How many apartment or condo units or townhouses is this board going to allow built in the village? There's one here that you're doing. They knocked down a historic building for, I believe, and they're going to build a 20-unit building there. Then they're going to do the Eman Center, and that's going to be a 60-unit building. Then 40, then 57, then whatever the other one is. Then the condos that are on Atwater currently, I believe, have a plan in place to expand. The ones that are off of Atwater behind the strip mall where CVS and the Mexican restaurant and stuff are, they have the ability to expand another 190 units. At what point are you guys going to say enough is enough with apartments and condos? So I listened for a few minutes and tried to ask a few questions, but mine were dismissed. So here's some quick math, just off the cuff, right? They say this whole thing is going to cost $90 million. If you divide 90 million by the 139 residents they're going to build, that is $697,482.07 that they have to sell every one of those buildings or every residence they're going to sell to break even. I'm sure everyone in this room, right, wrong, or indifferent, will agree that Mo Sherry is not in the business of building things to break even. Okay? If they're going to rent them, he admitted that they don't make money on sales, they make money on rentals. So at the end of the day, everybody in this room gets punished so the rich can get richer. He was very arrogant at one point, I felt, the gentleman in the white sweatshirt, and said, we're too big to not fail. We haven't marched down the field to punt. This is going through, and we have the money to make it go through, so you can either get used to it, or get over it, or get out of the way, I think is what he said. Thank you.
Thank you. So, please let Mr. Moseri respond. Yeah. Please.
They're not allowed to make additional speeches. It's on the green card on your sheet.
It's not a speech. I just say one of those words.
So, yeah, so, yes, Mr. Moseri, can we do this at the end? Thank you. Thank you. No, can we respond at the end?
Not one of those words were said.
Okay, please,
Okay.
we'll please respond.
You're so full of shit.
So,
We're too big to fail, and we're not going to punt. Those were your exact words.
so Pat O'Day, 837 Pine Tree, followed by Tawana Hewlett, 115 Bayfield Street. Pat O'Day?
I'm Tanya.
Yeah, is Pat O'Day here?
Pat?
No? All right, no Pat O'Day. Tawana, please, and then, I'm sorry, Tanya? Tanya, sorry. Followed by Michael Clements, 633 Leland Court.
I'm 1115 Bayfield Street in Bunny Run. I get to follow that greatness. Mine is very simple. I live in Bunny Run. There's everybody here that's been talking has been talking about the village, living in the village, around the lake. But this affects us just as much as it does the village. There are two ways to get out of Bunny Run, and it's called Flint Street and Atwater, unless you want to take dirt roads, which I've already spent enough money on my cars to fix. So, because the dirt roads are not taken care of. But, so, I work at the high school. And when school starts, today was the first day of school, it takes me 3 lights to get out of Atwater. Because if I took Flint Street, it'd take me 3 lights there, then to try and get through Atwater Light, to try and get, just to get to work. It takes me 45 minutes to get a 10-minute drive. So if you're adding all these people and all these houses, how many more kids are gonna be added, which granted, we'll take any kids, that are out there, but it's hard to get to work. We can't get to work. There's some other things that I put on here. So the commute, and then today I watched 2 girls, because it was a half day of school for middle school and elementary. 2 middle school girls were trying to ride their bike on M24 at McDonald's and live. Some lady was trying to come out and almost hit those 2 girls. They fell off their bikes and then pulled out, and another car almost hit. So nobody can turn left out onto 24, then you're gonna put all these other businesses and residents, and they keep talking about luxury apartments. I don't know about you guys, but I grew up General Motors. My parents worked for General Motors. We are blue collar, we're not rich, and you're trying to bring in all these luxury apartments where people can't even afford to come here. So, that's it.
Thank you. Michael Clements, followed by Joe Pawalczyk. Pass. Okay. I'm sorry, are you Michael or Joe? You're Joe, okay. So Michael Clements. Scott Hazelton, 1004 Arboric Way, Arboric, sorry.
Scott Hazelton, it's 1004 Arbrook Way. Just a couple quick comments. I've lived on the lake for 57 years, be 58 in October. Been on that lake my entire life from day one. I'm not opposed to progress. As Lake Orion has grown, roads have been widened, new traffic lights have been put in, new turning lanes, roundabouts have helped with the additional growth of the community. How has the lake been increased in size to handle the additional boat traffic? Hasn't. Note, it says on the paperwork, it says no additional slips, residents only. There's 139 residents, there's 439 boats. Again, I've been on the lake for 57, almost 58 years, and I can tell you the boat traffic out there makes me feel somewhat unsafe as a veteran boat operator on that lake. I think one of the things we need to do is better control. We need to find some way to control the boats not registered to the homeowners needs to be addressed before we add another 100 and potentially another 139 boats. Arbrook Way is back in the canals across from Inwood Golf Course. I live at the very beginning, not way back in there. And there are times on the weekends, not every day, but on weekends when I'd like to go out with my family that I have a hard time navigating just to get to my house because there's so many boats moored in that back bay because, of course, there's 200 boats already at the sandbar. And Dollar Bay, take your life in your own hands there. So I just think they need to address, I'm not opposed to the growth. I'm not opposed to that. But 24 is going to be a disaster for the 2 to 6 years minimum why they do that. And I just think that we haven't done anything. You can't increase the size of the lake. And if we're going to put more boats on it, we need to do something to address that. Thank you.
So, thank you. Jim Port, 436 South Broadway, and then George Dandelitis, 226 Bellevue.
You guys got my letter? I'm content with that. Thank you.
Okay, well, it'll be read into the record. Thank you. Mr. Dandelitis, 226 Pass. Thank you. Joanne Patterson.
I'm going to
Pass. Reva Beatty, is it 51 or 81 Crescent?
So anything I was going to say tonight was pretty much already mentioned. I don't want to waste anybody's more time, but I do just want to ask, I know this is a lot of information to take in and digest for you guys. I'm just asking, please move the vote on the PUD for Starboard property for tonight. Let's give it a couple more weeks to kind of look over these new plans because I believe they have changed in the last few weeks. That and there was just, for the amount of boats, there was one question that didn't get answered at the preliminary open house, so to speak. I did ask, if there's 40 units at Starboard, why is there 45 slips? If the slips are only going to the people that are renting there. And I think that security would be an issue for the people that are paying to keep their boats in their harbor. With keeping it open to the public, I don't think that's really a safe idea, just being that I even lived there for a short period of time throughout my life. There's a lot of people that roam the docks as it is, but keeping it open to the public, I don't think would be a safe thing for people keeping their boats there. And that's it. Thanks.
So Jeff Sinor, 416 Lake Street, followed by Tina Hine, 630 North Blackie Court. Blackie. I know, sorry. Sorry, but
there you go.
Well, gentlemen and ladies, pretty much everything I was initially going to speak about has been addressed. But one thing just with the attendance of the residents here, your fundamental challenge is this rezoning of these properties. That's what it all boils down to. But I wanted to explain what I've learned about our community and what these properties are all mixed use. And what is mixed use? Per the description in Article 9, Section 9.01, the statement of purpose of the village's zoning ordinance, it clearly states, quote, mixed-use district is intended to promote compatible combinations of commercial, office, service, and residential along M24, end of quote. Further states development in this district is intended to serve the nearby neighborhoods and not intended to be highway-oriented in scale. Continues to define within the section of 9.02 for the permitted uses. Section A, principal permitted uses and structures. Item 1 through 10 within that to be permitted uses are financial institutions, retail, restaurants, sale of food, such as grocery stores, health clubs, personal services, such as beauty, dry cleaning, studios, offices, publicly owned facilities, such as libraries, parks, and lastly, single and multiple family dwelling units when located above ground story and subject to the ground story being only non-residential use. Simplified, mixed means service, businesses, and restricted residential combination, not solely residential. You can get the gist of what the purpose of what the theme of this is. Mixed is trying to give us benefits with services in addition to some single-family residential. It's mixed. It's not only residential. And if it is that residential, as it states in here, the first floor can't be residential of a multi-story building. So that's what they're challenged with. These proposed developments do not meet these definition of intention of mixed use. Mixed use is intended to give benefits to the residents. Therefore, if you proceed with this proposal, the commission needs to deliberately change the zoning to possibly RM, multifamily residential. In addition to Darling property in the starboard, it needs to be changed to currently to RL Lake single family resident, which it is now, to multifamily residential. So if you proceed to do this, then you're intentionally changing the existing zoning established for this village, or by making exceptions for this developer against the wishes of the residents that live here. Please hear us and do what we are asking you to do.
Thank you very much. After Ms. Hine is Eric Papasek. Pass. Then on deck will be Tom DiAgostino, 175 Axford. Pass, and then, sorry, next on deck will be Michelle Duma, 95 North Shore.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Just listening to everybody tonight, and I would just like to reiterate basically what the majority of the people are saying. And I know I sent you all, the village, a couple emails, basically to vote no on these proposed multiple developments. We just really don't need it. We need to remember to keep a balance, because that's what this place is. You know, we have a township, not a major city, not a rural area. I would like to touch up on last year, if everybody remembers, we had horrible flooding last year. Multiple storms, too much concrete, and we really need to focus on fixing the problems at hand. Like in my subdivision, especially Sherry Street, which they just patch the holes, they don't fix the roads. The multiple truck traffic, I drove down Silver Bell, it was a nightmare. We really need to focus on fixing all the problems that we have on hand here. I see, because I work here, I drive every day. I've had to go to Oxford. I do home care. So I work with older adults. And I see all these condos, apartments, and residential areas already. We really don't need that. We really need to focus on what we really need. And just like someone had mentioned a marina, we got so many boats. We need room for boats. So we really need to work on that. Yeah, and the schools, because I've attended a couple planning meetings, the commission, and I mentioned, they said that, the schools can handle it. Well, I know we have a daughter in high school, and it's pretty congested over in that high school. There's a lot of people. So more people is just going to bring more problems. And we have, I received an email, we have a bus driver shortage. So now like the high school and middle schoolers have to ride, together. We don't, our businesses are already having issues with staffing. You go to the store, you go to Kroger. You go to Kroger, and usually, there's one lane open and everything else is self-checkout. Staffing issues. So let's work on that. Let's work on all the problems we have first before we bring more and more people here. None of us are against progress. Progress is great if it's the right progress. That's what it has to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Michelle Duma, it will be next. David Hodges will be on deck.
Hi there. Michelle Duma, 95 North Shore Drive. Just to reiterate what some of my neighbors have said, and that is please take your time in making this decision. It's a big one. I've lived on the lake my entire life. I've lived off the lake for a few years until I could afford to buy back on it again. I can only hope that my daughter, who's a junior at Lake Orion High School, gets an opportunity to live on the lake as well and enjoy it as much as she has as a kid. A lot of people are referring to the Darling House. When I was a kid growing up, that's where Steve raised rabbits. I bought one and saved it from becoming stew. But my point being is that corner has evolved over the years to being a lot of different things. So I think you guys should give yourself some time to see what do you really and what do we really want that corner to evolve into. It doesn't need to be decided in a month. It's been doing that that evolution has occurred over my 56 years of being on this planet, and give yourself a little bit more time to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So it'll be David Hodges, and then followed by Reggie Harrison. Pass.
Good evening. This mainly is to the people that are living here, and also I'm going to ask a request of the board tonight. There are a few of us standing amongst you that have been here since the beginning of time. We have, some of us older folks like myself, we have seen our community go from 3,500, that's in the township and the village together, to what it is today. We've seen 2 lanes on M24 go to what it is today. When you went over the top of Bald Mountain, if you had an old Model A, you had to turn it around and back up because you ran out of fuel because it was gravity fed. There's a lot of questions here tonight that need to be answered. The Messeri Group has come with a grand plan. I haven't had an opportunity to sit down and look at this at the Village Hall because there's not been any record of it on the walls anywhere. I was down there 2 weeks ago to study the plan and I didn't see it. I would like to see this whole plan put on display at the Village Hall. Put this on hold for 30 days so the people in this community can go down there and look at what is actually being planned. There's a lot of questions here tonight amongst everyone that they deserve to have answered. And those are concerns that need to be addressed by this body right here. I'm not against development. I'm not against progress, obviously. From 3,500 people to what it is today, nearly 38,000 in the township and the village. But this body can direct what that development does and how it's going to look, how it's going to affect our community. The lake is very special to all of us. We have approximately 8,000 acres of land and lakes in our community that will never be developed because it's either parkland or we have a massive amount of lakes, approximately 26 of them. We need to protect it. Meserry's come forward here to invest a lot of money to clean up some real eyesores. There are some unique buildings on M24 that possibly they could do something to pick them up and move them in their development so that we can still preserve those homes and they can still fit into their project. So that's all I have to say about this tonight. I think it's great that people came out here and voiced their opinions. This is going to impact. And there's one last thing. I haven't seen anything, but there's no service drive in this entire complex that's going to exit an entrance into a stoplight. Everything should be funneling into a stop site, into a stoplight to get in and get out. There shouldn't be any left-hand, right-hand traffic turning in unless it's by a stoplight. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Next up, Annette Benor, 67 Crescent, followed by Laura, is it Gabriel, 941 Jocelyn?
Hi, I'm Annette Benor. I reside at 67 Crescent Avenue. I guess what I'm here for is basically to ask if you guys would please give additional 30 days to review, because everyone here, I've listened to both sides of the, how can I describe it? The development. I understand about progress, and I'm for that, but I think that there's a lot of questions in regards to the development. And I think that I'm asking you guys, thank you for your time, but I'm asking if you guys could please give additional 30 days to review and maybe answer some of the questions that a lot of people have had. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Laura Gabriel, followed by Scott Gabriel.
Laura Gabriel, 941 Joslyn Road. I think I have a bit of a unique perspective on this. As you've seen before, my husband and I are divers of the lake, and we've been diving it for over 20 years. But also, I was an officer for Oakland County, all through the county, for 36 years. I have seen every community in the county, plus my travels with my husband around the states and over the seas. You can't appreciate until you go and see these other places how unique and special we are here, our history, our unique architecture, and this beautiful lake that we are killing. Because I have been under this lake. There is so much debris and oil and just trash under there and not much life. And we've dove most all the lakes in Oakland County. There's fish, there's plants, there's life there. There's not so much in Orion Lake. It's a mess under there. And just the thought of just pulling up Atwater from coming from work, because I work at an art gallery now, I'm one of your local artists, and not seeing that one beautiful house with the turrets on there just breaks my heart, because that is some place that you will see in some villages, but not on a lake. and our architecture is gorgeous, and I hate to see us lose it, because once you tear it down, I'm sorry, but, condos and apartments cannot measure up to these gorgeous buildings and our history that we would be losing. We would lose the flavor of this place, and it will put more stress on this lake that it does not need. The lake is in trouble under there. If you've ever dove it, I've seen globules of oil just covering the bottom of the lake this big, all over the bottom, and not including all the trash that people have put out on the lake all these years. So I think that you're stressing the area and the lake especially by putting that many more boats and that much more traffic. We were at I have a new foreign exchange student here, so we were out at the lighted boat parade. We were at Greens Park and trying to come back across towards the village so we can get to the car. There was 25 of us walking. We had the light. We had the crosswalk sign saying we could cross. Don't you know a car tried to run us down and beeped at us and was indignant that we were crossing with everybody else there. And that was just in the evening on a weekday. We lost the lights.
I lost the feed.
Yeah, so I have big concerns about adding more people and more stresses on our traffic, our population, and definitely our lake, and essentially losing our history. I think this is a big concern, and I think we will sincerely regret losing our history like this. Some of these homes, they have so much history and stories. My husband and I used to go around on the boat and look at the stories. Some of them we would just make up stories for, because they're so unique architecture. I hate to see them go.
Thank you very much. So Scott, and followed by Jody Hand, 467 Elgin.
Do you want a minute to fix the feed, or?
I think the computer just the laptop went to sleep.
Scott Gabriel, 941 Joslyn. Beyond all the concerns, my wife said it quite well. I have environmental and ethics. I am a bit of a political fan / junkie, so I go around to different meetings, listen, brought my foreign exchange student to see American government, and this is not disappointed. And, and I was at a township zoning meeting exactly like this at another place, and there was a hint by the same last name of there might be an impropriety. That council person reclused himself, and not only reclused himself, but stood up and left the room whilst that vote was going on. That was kind of impressive, just putting it out there, not saying anything about anybody. And environmental, when they, Messeri, or whoever else develops this is a post-industrial zone. You have the lumber yard, there's a lot of chemicals over there. All those railroad ties, things like that. They've got PCBs, PCRs, PFAS, and it's all buried right now. The minute you start digging up those seawalls and you start doing a little bit of dredging, which anybody's going to have to do, not just them, you're going to disturb that which is buried. You're going to release a bloom of those PCBs and those PFASs into the lake. I don't know the solution to that. You guys are engineers. You probably know a whole lot more than I do, but just maybe put that in your notes.
Thank you very much. So it'll be Jody Hand, followed by Nicole Curtis.
Yes, hi, Jody Hand, 467 Elgin Street. A few weeks ago, I sent this email to every one of you with 27 questions. I do not know what the standard procedure is to get answers to the 27 questions, but I've not received a single reply from anyone for any of the 27 questions, which I was very disappointed in. There is a few that I would like to talk about quickly tonight. First of all, if you do have my questions, it's number 14 and number 11 with regards to the master plan for the Village of Lake Orion. There is a number of things within the development that is being talked about that do not match up with the village master plan. I know that the village council spent a great deal of money to have this developed and written for them. I think it's very disappointing that we are going directly against a number of things in the village master plan. One was reasonably limit the impact and number of boats on Lake Orion to protect its value as a recreational resource and its ecological ecological system. Obviously, we're not going to follow that with adding a whole bunch more. Also, there was a clear recommendation in the master plan by the council that no big developments on lake, that we're not to build any big developments on lake. I can't think of one a whole lot bigger than what they're proposing. So I am curious as to why this was paid for and whether that applies to this council. I would assume that it would, since you are the planning council. One of the other things I wanted to point out as well was when talking in the information session earlier, question and answer, it was brought up that the Mosheri had been talking to you guys for 6 months. That was extremely disappointing to me. I did not learn about this entire thing until August 1st. The idea that we put into place, that we voted into place, has been talking for 6 months without word one. I work, I have a full-time job, and I often travel. I cannot attend every village council meeting. I know they're in the evening. If I am out of the country, I can't be here. And on TV does not go to Italy, so I can't get them. And I can't get yours every single night. So I'm very disappointed that 6 months this was being talked about. I find that very concerning, absolutely. One of the other things is the SAD assessment for weed control. Right now it is done parcel by parcel. Once, if this development goes through, they will be considered one parcel. Who's going to make up the difference in that cost? Is that going to be distributed amongst all of the other homeowners? Do we have to pick up the cost for them for the weed control? Also, they talked about the boat launches were going to be residents and seasonal only. Honestly, that leaves a lot of people out in the dark. People that rent boat slips now, and they will no longer be allowed to launch their boat, which takes a lot of village residents out. And very quickly, has the DNR actually evaluated the health of the lake itself? I don't think that the lake can take that many more people on it. I agree with the last folks with the condition under the water. I think before this is voted on and decided, I think the DNR needs to do a real, true assessment of the health of the lake itself. It is our most valuable asset, and I hate to see it ruined.
Thank you. Nicole Curtis, followed by Amanda Prince. Ms. Curtis, if you wouldn't mind stating your primary residence, your address isn't on here.
Right. Nick, legally, does it have to be on there? Because as far as I know, it does not, correct? Lake Orion, Michigan.
No address.
It
Mr.
doesn't.
Chair?
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there's no requirement that they
Great,
provide.
thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to start my time after that. Nicole Curtis, and echoing what so many people have said here, we're not against progress. We are for following the master plan. I do want to bring up a couple things. You did not live stream the public hearing that has been said was a courtesy by Mosheri. It did get very heated in there. What Mr. Fodder, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, what he said was said. So there is no reason for a developer to come in and be disrespectful to the residents, simply asking for answers. And that has occurred several times. The plans have changed, as we all know. There has been many issues of miscommunication. We are asking, I've heard this again and again tonight, they're going to take 2 to 6 years to do this development. Why are we rushing this vote? Take 30 minutes. Review this material again. We keep passing the buck to MDOT, saying that MDOT didn't do their job. Well, then you guys as our zoning board go back to MDOT and say, hey, we really need to reevaluate this. This is not a true study. You don't need a study from MDOT to know that this traffic is terrible as it is, that it is unsafe. On a weekday, on a weekend, it doesn't matter. This is not a lake issue. This is a Lake Orion issue, township and village. I think so many people are seeing this as just a lake issue. This affects us all. There is no way to take M24 any wider. We're already bumper to bumper as it is. We are busting at the seams. We can't get our tech feed correct, right? We can't get services at the village right now. We're understaffed. We have a part-time zoning consultant. We have an interim city manager. We are understaffed with even our city staff. Everything It's okay to take our time and do this. Sherry, no disrespect. We understand that you do quality builds. What we're asking is that the build meet the requirements of our master plan already here. As proposed, none of the Sherry developments meet the mixed-use zoning requirements as they are residential mixed use, not just mixed use. Zoning ordinance Article 9, that's already been stated this evening. This is a lot of information for most people to comprehend, to have the time to go through. We've scheduled a public hearing on the Tuesday after Labor Day when all of our kids went back to school, correct? All of us are here on borrowed time right now. We're just simply asking, let's take our time with this. If we're gonna do this, let's do it right. Let's do something, let's find some compromise here. As we know, it's not meeting the current master plan. It's just not. There's so many different things here. When we say that it is a live-work unit, you guys just can't make up the zoning language on the fly. We don't have anything currently in our zoning ordinances regarding this. As far as, the proposed developments, we have gone from, there is a difference between 3 stories, 4 floors, garage underneath, garage on top. Who cares? We have to make sure that it's doing that. I appreciate your time, and again, we are just simply asking for all of you to table this vote. Wait 30 days. We have a 6-year, $90 million development on the table here. What's 30 more days going to do any harm? Thank you.
Ms. Principal, one sec. On deck will be Michael Marachin. I'm sorry, because it just has a phone number. So, okay, Ms. Prince.
My name's Amanda Prince. I live at 170 West Flint Street. A lot of good, valid points have been made tonight. I also would like you guys to take the time and go over this and wait the 30 days. My main concern would be the traffic and the safety of personally our neighborhood, because I live right there across from the marina, and there are several houses, home-owned houses right in front that do not have driveways. We have street parking only, and with cutting the curb across the street from us and putting in a, in-out area, that's at least 3-4 parking spots that is being taken away from us where we currently already live. We have kids, a ton of kids in the neighborhood, and adding a huge development like this changes so much for our neighborhood, let alone our community. I don't think there's many houses in our neighborhood at a $4,000 mortgage selling point, let alone a renting $4,000 a month. It's just crazy. And to have a huge building like that right on the corner, we walk around to Greens Park right there. There's just so much. There's so many families that use that. It's just extremely large for our area. And I think we need to check into that intersection, because that is a major problem already. And with adding more residents to that intersection is going to be even bigger disaster. I've seen people run over at that crosswalk. I've seen accidents. The light goes out all the time, and every time it goes out, there is accidents on top of just the regular ones. So that is a huge thing we need to address before we are making a huge decision like this. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Michael Marachin, okay, thank you. Sorry. Dave Hicks, followed by Mary Matthews, 630 Detroit.
Dave is Pat. He had to leave.
Okay. So Mary Matthews, 630 Detroit, followed by Amy Bird.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the time and everybody that's here. I mean, this is what it's all about in Lake Orion is community, right? So why are we rushing this? I'm just asking to please think about our neighbors and this huge development and what's going to happen to those residents on the west side. I mean, think about fireworks and how crazy it is that day of fireworks and all the parking. What's going to come in? More people? Pontoon boats. Pontoon boats carry people. It's not going to just be one or two people. We fill them up. That's what we do. It's great. But if we have more people coming in, and that development only allows for so much parking for the residents and a limited amount of guest parking, which I'm sure it does, I'm just very concerned about that west end of the village. I mean, what happens if there's an emergency? Because it's going to be congested more often. So give this more time. Let everybody absorb it. I think everybody wants some change. We want to see it cleaned up, but not like this. Not at the expense of our community and everybody being at odds. Let's find a compromise.
Thank you. So Amy, excuse me, Ms. Bird, Horst Greiser, 500 Manitou, next, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're next.
Oh.
He's on deck. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Bird. I'm a longtime resident and a business owner here. I started kindergarten at Stadium Elementary. I've lived here my entire life. I've been here 50 years. I've seen a lot of changes, a lot of positive things have happened here. I love growth. However, I have 2 students that attend school here. I had 2 kids graduate. I hate driving my kids to school in Lake Orion. It's it's a main thoroughfare for commuters. It's the only way to get to 75. It's the only way to get our kids to school. So to say that we don't have a traffic issue in Lake Orion is ignoring the elephant in the room. So that is not the most serious issue. I mean, this is one development of several that is planned over the next year, and more will be planned in the coming years. So I think that it's something we cannot continue to ignore. We have to do something about this issue if we're going to continue to develop and build here. So I don't know if it means taking out the medians. I don't know what we're going to do. But folks, we got to resolve this issue. It's a problem. Also, we have problems with the grid. We have, how many people on the lake were out of power? Our electrical grid cannot maintain what we have now. So I don't know what the plans are for this development or the others that are proposed. But we can't maintain what we have with the infrastructure already. So my other concern is that our taxes are going to continue to go up and our quality of life is going to continue to diminish. As taxes go up and traffic increases, I can't get out of my sub as it is. I can't get my kids to school. I can't get to 75. My other concern as a business owner downtown, when this project starts along 24, will there be impediments in the road? Is it going to stop traffic essentially downtown? Will there be lanes blocked? And what is that going to do to businesses downtown? I know when the project started to repair the infrastructure, it was devastating to businesses downtown when they tore up the roads. We can't take that again this year, folks. There needs to be something in the contracts that guarantees that there will not be any impediments in those roads to stop or delay traffic along 24. We can't take it. So I'm asking that that be included in your provisions. I know that, progress has to come, but not at a loss for the downtown business owners. I also, just want to also just say that I'm very disappointed because the last meeting that I was at, we were told that we were encouraged to come and ask questions. I was there. He said, come ask questions. We encourage you to come and ask questions, and now we're being told we can't. I also want to say that I request that this vote be tabled not for 30 days, but for 60, because y'all have been talking about this for 6 months. Give us 60 days.
Thank you.
60 days, folks.
Thank you.
Because every time we come, this
Mr.
plan
Greiser.
changes.
Thank you. Am I pronouncing that correct?
Thank you.
And then Jeff Snor again, 416 Lake.
Horst Greiser, 500 Manitou Lane. I just want to say thank you for your time. I know it's been a long day for you guys. Thank you for the website. I was able to watch while driving home for an hour, listening to this, and there were a lot of great ideas. For me, it's like deja vu. I've been through this with the Firestone project. Same excuses. Oh yeah, we have this DOT stuff. Yeah, the traffic, no problem. But when you live behind it, yeah, it's untrue. And I commend the board. The board at that time voted against the Firestone thing, and then all of a sudden they're building it because they were sued. So my big concern here is, let's assume that, you guys are going to vote against it. Then there's a concern, Mosheri obviously has a lot of money. Are they going to sue? I mean, Mosheri does a great job with their homes, but do they need to shove all these homes in here? Do single home family. We don't need to put all this in. There was a gentleman when I listened here that mentioned all these other condos that have an option to build more. If they continue to build, it's not just the numbers that they're adding, but the others already have the permission to add. So, I mean, I've been a resident here since 1975. Mosheri, how long has he been a resident here? So I'm not taking it personal at him, but you know what? You could easily scale this down. Don't be so greedy. He does beautiful single homes. Build that. We don't need all this. We have enough of it. Thank you for your time.
And finally, Jeff Sonor, 416 Lake again.
I guess this will just be more for entertainment for the audience, because I know at a board in a hearing, all you do is hear every complaint. Nobody has a proposal. Well, I thought I was going to come in tonight to offer a proposal to just help you out, but it's a moot point now, because tonight I found out that the property, the marina, has been already closed on. But I'm going to still share this with you. Number one, look into the cause of the closing that was canceled by Tommy's and see if there is any potential renegotiation. The local Tommy's personnel told me that they are interested to be part of our community, but their corporate walked away due to final requests of the seller before closing. The seller may have a different outlook if this proposed development does not happen, or even another marina business that's either in or out of state. Zoning would not have to change with the marina and Rob's Interiors in place. It could stay as mixed use. And second, next, the village and DDA fund to purchase the Darling properties and convert the first home on the lake to a historical museum for the village. Maybe additionally, a GoFundMe or charitable fundraisers could help this out. Afterwards, then change that zoning to mixed use as a publicly owned building. All the artifacts, such as the pictures, etc., from all the businesses being renovated in the village have a place to be displayed. I believe our resident historian, Riva, could even assist in this activity. A location for our past to be, it would be a location for our past to be remembered. In addition, a DDA could also move their offices to the second floor of the home and not have to pay rent in the village. I realize this is just a proposal now, it's just a fantasy, but it's just at least a proposal I was prepared to give you. You do not need to hear complaints from all the residents all the time. It would be a potential solution to make everyone happy. A fantasy is only a dream unless it's pursued. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. So that's all the cards that I have. Thank you very much for your participation. Is there anyone else that would like to speak that didn't get an opportunity? Okay, so we also have letters and emails that we need to include in today's hearing. But rather than read all these, I will just read the names of who submitted them. They will be read, put into the record, correct, and part of this public hearing. Tina Hine sent an email, Max Zader a letter, Scott Fiscarelli a letter, Joanne Van Tassel a letter, Jim Pratt a letter, Tom and Sue Albert a letter, Jeffrey Sutherland sent a letter, Terry Gronzer sent a letter, Robert Cannon Pastor Roos Jr., Ingrid Tott, Brian Barnett, and Corey Johnson. Sure. Sure, thank you very much. And we have one other letter. This will be from Dennis Rulassen from Lake Street. With that, we will conclude our public hearing at 9:49. Again, thank you very much. One thing I'd like to say is that as a planning commission, I know a lot of things were said. Believe me, we're listening. We are residents. We're not elected. We volunteer for this. We volunteer for it because we want to make sure that buildings conform. There are ordinances, and we try to follow them. So please understand that we are listening. But we also have a job to do, and that is to follow the village ordinances. So we'll move on. Do we have any old business? None? So we'll move on to new business, which is line item 9A, the Starbird PDU redevelopment, and our presentation from our planner. So.
Thank you. Evening, Commissioners. The application before you is part of a planned unit development, a PUD. And on page 2 of our review, we summarize the PUD process. So earlier this year, in June, the PUD eligibility plan was reviewed by the Planning Commission and recommended for approval to Village Council for that PUD eligibility, in which 5 criteria needed to be satisfied. So that was approved at those public meetings, and since then, the applicant has been revising their plan, and they have submitted for a preliminary PUD plan approval. This is a 2-step process. It requires first Planning Commission review and a recommendation to Village Council. It's not the same as a site plan review. Site plan review is the following step, should it get to that point, and that is when the full site plan details need to be provided. So at this stage of preliminary PUD review, we're looking at building footprints, open space areas, massing, general architecture, and the uses. It's not as specific as this plant goes here and meets this requirement. Although the level of detail that the applicant has provided on their plans exceeds what is required for preliminary plan review. Since the June meetings where the PUD eligibility was discussed, the applicant has made some adjustments to their plan, pending the feedback received by the commission and the council. So originally there were over 50 units proposed. That was dropped to 46, and then to 40, which is the currently proposed plan. They've also increased their open space and have not increased their impervious surface. So this evening, you've just opened and closed, you've held the public hearing. So the next step is to hear from the applicant, to deliberate, and then the available motions to you this evening would be to make a recommendation to Village Council for approval or denial, or to table the project. You could table it for a certain amount of time, and request additional information from the applicant to be provided to you. Our review notes that even though the site plan isn't required at this stage, that based on the amount of information that they have provided, they have satisfied a number of requirements of the zoning ordinance. So this would include the pedestrian access. They've exceeded the parking requirements, landscaping, lighting is in compliance. They've satisfied the percentage of common areas and environmental sensitive design elements. Considerations really as a priority for the Planning Commission tonight would be the building architecture and massing, the orientation of the units themselves, the buildings. The applicant has noted on sheet 3 that the existing boat launch could remain as part of this development, but they've also proposed an alternative in the bottom left corner where the boardwalk is extended. So this is one item for some deliberation this evening on the direction that you'd like to see that go in, as well as just the open space areas, the Greens Park connection, and that view shed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So applicant, Mr. Tringelli?
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you're all here. This is going to be a long night because I'm hoping to have most of your answers for you that you all just brought up in that meeting. So I have another presentation.
Susan, that monitor's not on. I think it went to sleep. I might have to power it down, power it back up. That might be a good idea. We take a 5-minute recess, since this is a long meeting, so we can try to get that working.
Sounds good.
So 5-minute recess, we'll reconvene at 10 p.m.
Yeah, me too.
I have no idea. I'm gonna go fix the monitor. Thank you, thank you.
Sure, and send Bill.
Yes.
Need more sugar.
All right. Have a good one.
Yeah.
You guys let the Mercury Corporation buy Green Park.
Good job, you did it.
Park is not included in the purchase of this property. Green Park stays.
Park should not be for sale.
Correct. Park's not for sale. Park's not for sale.
You gotta make sure it's on the record. Okay.
Wait for Laura.
You have room on me?
And Laura.
No. That's gonna have to imagine.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting.
It always dies down after these recesses. It always dies down after these recesses. We lose probably every 20 people, I feel like, every time we take a little break.
It's interesting.
Without Laura?
We can wait.
You want to wait?
Some gum in here. They're solid.
We'll wait for Laura.
The plastic stuck to them?
She got to work.
All right.
You eating all that candy?
You gotta keep going, baby.
Sugar rush.
Exactly.
Yeah, wait for Laura. There's a wait for the ladies' restroom.
Okay. Oh. Should have got a pass to get in right away. Nice job.
I'm sorry?
Nice job, Ian.
Fix the TV. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to reconvene 10:04. Mr. Tringali.
Great, thank you. Thank you for everybody sticking around. You know, I've heard a lot of your comments, and hopefully this is a more detailed presentation than what I gave before that'll answer actually some of your questions. I'm not sure if you're going to like all the answers, but I do have answers to the majority of questions that you have. So this part of the presentation is about Starboard. And Starboard is the old marina. As you can see, here's the parameters of the project and what we're going to be doing. So I know some of you were caught off guard, but basically back in the 1st of June, we actually had gone through what we call basically a planned unit development, the PUD, gone through on June 6th with the council and reviewed the development. And we actually at that time, based on what Laura has reviewed, your planner met all the requirements to go forward in this. So this project has been in the works since June 1st. I understand that most of you just kind of heard about it in the last month or so, but it has been in the works. It has been in the process. So as it goes through this, as you look at what was reviewed before, we've met all those requirements. And as you heard also, we also made some adjustments. We reduced the density. I have some new sketches of Flint Street, the improvement of Lake Street. We created the boardwalk access, more green space, and we were talking about what we're doing to Lake Street at the same time as well. So as we look at this project and that research I was doing, found these old photos. This is what the marina actually looked at way back when. Boathouses right along there. Shoreline was like this. I thought this was kind of an interesting viewpoint of what the marina was. This is the current site plan. Right now, there's two buildings that are actually non-conforming. This one right here that's highlighted is basically non-conforming for its location and it's closest to M24, and obviously it totally blocks Greens Park. Over here, these are all units, these two buildings here that are completely on the water, which also is non-conforming as well. And those will be more important as we get into the details. So, overview of the whole project. It's 40 residents where we had over 50 before. A PUD is needed for this, and PUDs are required for when land is in odd shape. Other deviations come into play that I'm going to talk to you about. So we're going for this PUD. We do have 42% open space, which is 4 times the requirements. Now, I understand that most of you are looking into the ordinance, they're looking into the master plan, but really, even as an architect, I don't look into it as much as I rely on the planner to. So she's looked at it, they interpret it, she then recommends to the council of how it should go, and that's what really belongs in there. We can always interpret things differently, but the master plan is pretty set. How they read it, how she's interpreting it, all belongs to really in her kind of format of what she does. The proposed development also is less than what the maximum zoning is. We kind of talked about that. I know some of you don't agree. This building right here is the 22 residents. That's 3 stories of living with a 4-story of parking underneath. We are going to preserve this boathouse, the existing boathouse that's in this location. And then over here in the landings, we have basically 7 residents total that we have going across here, and I'll show you the details and some of the deviations and some of the other items that we're requesting. We have the residents along Lake Street, 3 units here and a unit here, and then we have the peninsula, which actually was originally 3 lots, and then I'll show that as well too, and then we're keeping 4 buildings. This building is actually buried into the hillside, so it won't be really visible at all. And these 3 buildings are the same size as the old cottages used to be, kind of tucked into the hillside through there. We're eliminating the curb cut here on M24. That was really ruled again by MDOT. And then basically we're reworking the entrance so you don't have a bad connection that MDOT actually didn't like either, and doing a straight entrance here right into West Flinton Street. We're actually creating this view shed that goes right to Greens Park. This area is not part of Greens Park, but we'll try to incorporate it so that way you have this view that looks all the way through there and is expanding that kind of view line to the lake. We also have a possibility of having access for police and fire boats here at this dock area. We also have another access that could be for vehicles, if need be, that connect to Greens Park through here. That would be more like ambulance vehicles or something like that that would be needed in case of emergencies. So that's an option as well, too. And then regarding the boats that we have here, there's 40 residents total. We're actually, I'll get into the boats a little bit later, but the extra boat slips that we have in there, those are the ones that will be to the other development that we'd use down there. So we're not increasing any of those docks that are there, keeping them all in place as they are. Same thing as the other rules that we've already discussed. We're not doing any party boat rentals, no public access. This is that launch that we've discussed as well through there. And as of now, we were proposing that it's launches for our residents on a seasonal use. And then once again, it'll be open to anyone who owns a boat on Lake Orion for seasonal use again only. So there is no daily rentals, no daily drop-off, no weekends, nothing along those lines. So as we get into the details, well, the last thing too is the snack shop. We are actually keeping that as well and then maintaining that. That will have some type of monitoring because we will have someone who's on site and managing all of those. So besides the way it is now, which is by card, there'll actually be someone who will maintain it. We're actually about thinking, elaborating that into a snack shop as well for all the people on the lake, just not our residents, and maybe returning that to some of the previous architecture that was once at the dock area, at the marina area. So the details a little bit more, some inspirational images that I showed you earlier of what we're trying to do here at the landings, more of a coastal look. We have the highlights of keeping the Sutherland House and restoring it to once what it was. We have the view shed and the connection to Green Park, as well as a connection around this area, so that walkway would all be redone to another pocket park here. Opening up that dock space more to the public and that whole walkway and boardwalk. We're keeping that boathouse, as I mentioned, and keeping the gas. Now the details. For the larger 4-story building, and there might have been some confusion. There was a 4-story building on Constellation. It never was on M24. It was on the water. We did change that, some of the revisions that we've made. But basically, this building is a 4-story building. It's 3 stories of living, 1 story of parking underneath. There's no curb cut that we have on Broadway, and then we're doing that new entrance you talked about on Lakefront. There was one thing, too. On the parking, go back. So the parking that we have is basically, we're providing 111 total parking spots. 72 of them will be in garages. 80 is what's required by the master plan. So we feel we have enough parking to accommodate the whole site. And we also, because we're having 72 attached garages, we're eliminating a lot of the car pollution and mostly of the vehicles that are left outside or parked outside. They're all going to have their own garages or they're in the deck on the underground. So as we look at this site, I look back at some of the history at the 4-story Bellevue Hotel, which was an inspiration for what I created here. It's not a mimic of it. It's not a duplication. It's just something that I thought was very unique, something that I thought could fit in well, and that's where the concepts for this view of the 4-story came from. Yeah, it was just an inspiration of where I got it from. It's not a duplicate of it, like I said, but it has some historic value, I think, in bringing it back and doing something along those lines that I think fit into place. So this is the back part. On the rear lake view, there is a pool on the second deck of this building that faces up the water. And then you can see the arches here that I'm trying to duplicate here. And then within the ordinance is really the height requirement. And just to give you a little better example, you know, as you drive on the lake, obviously there's houses that are 3 stories. But really, when you look at them, there's a retaining wall that's somewhere along the lines of 10 foot tall. So from the water, they're actually 4-story through here. The height of this building meets the requirement of the 4-story overlay that we have here. And actually, from the street side, we're a little bit less on this side, just because I think we can get the building into the ground a little bit more here, so it's not quite as tall. I know people had some concerns about the fireworks. Fireworks are well above this building, as you can see as this rendering indicates. And so we think that that really won't affect it as much as some people might concern, but by opening up the harbor to more of the public and public access, I think there'll even be a better view from circling around there. So, to some of the more details for the Planning Commission. There are basically 2 major deviations that we're looking for. In the MU ordinance, it has to be either 10 to 25 feet away off of M24 or Broadway here. Well, because we wanted to open up that view shed going through here and open up the view to Greens Park, I'm actually 67 feet away. So I'm not within that 25 feet that's required. I'm over that. But I think the importance of opening up that corner is actually more important than keeping within that MU. So we're looking for a deviation from the maximum distance away of 25 feet to we're actually 67 feet farther away. The other deviation is this corner, which is a little tricky. The MU requires you to be 10 feet away as a minimum. We're approximately 6.4 feet away, and that's from the right-of-way, which is where it's usually taken. But the intent of the ordinance is really to have 10 feet from the roadway, and we do have that. We're about 10.2 feet away from the actual curb. But because we reworked Lake Street, because we can't rework the right-of-way, we don't technically meet the ordinance in that condition. But like I said, I do feel we meet the intent because we are 10 feet away from the curb, but because we're not moving that right-of-way, we're stuck with the right-of-way of where it's at, and we're not in actual accordance. The other thing we're asking for is a maximum height allowed under the underlane MU height district. So the building is under that 52 feet. We meet that requirement, so if we're asking for those 3 things for this particular building. Next one is the landings. So the landings are units that we have placed along here. There's 2 buildings and there's 6 units. The existing house is going to remain and then eventually be renovated. So it'll be a total of 7 new units that we're putting off of Flint Street. They do have front door entrances. Some of them have porches along Flint Street, but their rear entrance, they have another entrance and a garage that's all on the back through here. Now this area is really tricky because it's actually 2 different zonings. This yellow area that you see here is actually in the MU. So all of Building 2 and part of Building 3 is in the MU zoning. So the front yard setback is actually met we're not asking for any front yard deviation here, even though when you look on Flint Street, we have some houses that are 12 feet away, 14 feet away, 14.8, 24 feet away. So basically, in trying to keep the context of the street and how the old cottages were, we're trying to do the same thing across the street. So really, what we need here, though, is once again the same issue. I'm not able to change the right-of-way, even though I'm able to adjust the road within the right-of-way. Technically, 3.6 inches I'm away from that right-of-way line. It doesn't meet the MU, which is 10 feet. So we are 10 feet to the curb, but not to the right-of-way. So on building 3, the only deviation that we're asking for is that additional roughly 6 feet from the curb. It meets, but not from the right-of-way. So that's building 2 and what we need there. Now, on building 3, it actually is in line with the existing building, the existing house that we're keeping, which is 16 feet. So this building, it normally, because it's in a different zoning, needs to be 25 feet. I'm not able to match that 25 feet, but I do match the character and the intent of the street, because like I said, the other house across the street is only 12 feet away, 14 feet away, 14 feet away. This is actually 17, 16 to this point, and the existing building next door is 16 as well. So building 3, we are looking for that front yard deviation, and then the backyard, once again, I still run into the same issue with the right-of-way, but the driveways are 20 feet here. This exceeds it. This is roughly right at it. This doesn't meet it. So we're looking for that rear yard setback, but at the same time, half of this building is in the MU, so this part of the building technically meets. So the real variance we're looking for is for the middle section of that building 3. So we're looking for a front yard and then that rear yard deviance. That takes care of the Flint Street product. Now, looking back at the old cottages, went through a lot of photos, mixed use of product that was built back then, which was kind of unique. On Flint Street themselves, you can see the different residents and the different pictures that we have there. Had this kind of, I would call it craftsman kind of cottagey style. And this is the elevation that we're proposing. So it looks like 3 individual homes, 3 individual cottages, I should say. It's a craftsman look. We brought the roof lines down low. We brought the porches into effect. So 2 of the building would be on Flint Street. And I think architecturally, the character really fits in well, will fit in what's into there, and also will blend with all of Flint Street view. Now, the next portion is basically Lake Street. So on Lake Street, because we feel opening up this public access and boardwalks kind of important and leaving this open space, the old marina, I found some old pictures back in 1991, what it looked like, modern day pictures today of what it looks like. So these buildings that you see right here are all right on the water, as you know. So when you overlay the 2 of them, this is what we're looking for. The intent of the PDD allows you for deviation of setbacks for parcels that are narrow and irregular. Obviously, we have that situation. We also have a non-conforming building that's right on the water. So from the objective of moving that Lake Street Road, we actually meet the ordinance from the curb again, but I run into the same problem of not being able to adjust that right-of-way. So technically, I don't meet the ordinance from the right-of-way. But I think we do meet the intent of it here. As far as from the rear, we're basically required to be 25 feet. Well, since we're moving the existing building off of there, we think it's a benefit to do that. And by doing that, we're looking for deviation so that we have these rear yard encroachments anywhere from 24 feet to this end down to 10 feet on this end, but still allowing that boardwalk that you see here, which is actually over the water line, to continue up and around. So the benefit is removing the existing buildings from the water's edge, creating a public use for that boardwalk and keeping that intent while still keeping these carriage units that fit your overall master plan of different products and different viabilities on Lake Street. This was just a neat little picture I found of that boathouse. I'd love to incorporate this somehow into that design as we take this to the next step. And maybe that becomes the gas dock, the station, but just, you know, some unique history and character that somehow we would like to keep as well. Now, and finally, the overall kind of look of this area before I get to the next part of it. We actually were at the Dragon on the Lake Festival. Actually paddled in the boat. It was great. Met some terrific people. But what I found out during that festival is this is the most underused area that there was there. The boats were all there. Nobody was there. It was a beautiful area. So we're thinking that this actually could open this up, and this would be a great place for continuing the Dragon on the Lake. Maybe we close down Lake Street during that. Maybe we close down Lake Street during the 4th of July. But basically giving this back to the public and not keeping it as narrow with no one using it, no one vitalizing it, and looking down that lake and that view. So that's what the intent of this whole area between those buildings are. Touching base on the docks. So this is our information that we got. So regarding the boats, we've kind of touched base on that. We don't intend on adding any more. And then the extra docks that we use here, we'll put at one of our other projects. So there's about 7 that are extra in here. We are going to be improving that water quality. We'll put in the new drainage system. And obviously, we're going to be controlling the boat traffic again. Now, the peninsula. So this was interesting of what to do with the peninsula and the Darling Cottage that we had there. But to clear some of the confusion, there's basically 4 buildings, these 3 and 1 that'll be basically hidden and buried into the hill. There's a total of 7 residents here. So there's 2 in each one of these and then 1 resident here. Now, here's a view of the Darling Cottage. If you guys aren't familiar, well, here's a little better view. Okay, a little closer. So, this is actually the Darling Cottage in 1991. This is currently where it's at. On that historical registry that I mentioned to you, it was not valid 15 years ago as far as being able to do it, and certainly is not today. It's pretty much been abandoned. It's deteriorating, but it does have some interesting story to it. Some of the information I found, was interesting. It talks about the major renovations that were made back in 1965, major renovations made after that. So the cottage has gone through several renovations. That's the report I talked about. The highlighted area, Darlington Cottage, not eligible, and that was 15 years ago. So today I doubt if it would make it again. But I do know that there's many people who still think something about it. So this was posted, which I thought maybe I missed something. So I dug a little closer in this change.org. This photograph is really a highlighted postcard. It really didn't have color back then when the photographs were there. But then I started opening this up and I looked on it and come to find out that this guy's from Pittsburgh, California, New York. It looks like most of the people are from out of state. This one person here from Ohio basically had some information, but she doesn't know about Mosheri, doesn't know about the project, doesn't know about the information. So I dug a little deeper on this change.org. Come to find out, change.org, allegations of fake signatures. Change.org has a consumer rating of 1.96, didn't even make 2. Change.org is practicing unfair ethical businesses. So I dug even deeper. So Michael Valentine from Salt Lake City decided to go ahead and post that. He seemed like a great guy. I actually reached out to him through Twitter. He's a filmmaker, a writer, an artist, a humanist, an atheist, and a cat mom. So he was actually a very nice guy. Doesn't know anything about the project, has a friend here locally. He's actually an activist, so they post these things. They get other people from all across the country to sign it, to get these petitions to move forward, to try to get city councils and planning missions to say, oh, geez, we have 5,000 people who signed this. So if you look deeper on this, it's really not what you think it is on the face.
Because we don't have 5,000 people in Lake Orion, but thank you.
We don't.
So a lot of Lake Orion signatures here.
So basically, when you look at what proposing, this originally was 3 lots that was bought. It's lots 16, 17, and 18. So there could be 3 Bigfoot homes there. But rather than do that,
with this section you see here and the hillside, I'm actually designing this as the original cottages were. It's about 28 feet wide, fit into the hillside. There'll be 3 of these that we're going to cut into the hillside with 1 unit down below and another unit above. So this was an approach that I decided to take on this lot, making it kind of in character as it blends around the corner. So the original cottages would have been something like that, had it been the original 3 lots, 16, 17, and 18. And this is the approach that we're taking with that. We did look at the Darling Cottage, and just based on everything I told you, the information I showed you, we think this is a better approach of how we do that. Finally, the traffic issue. Once again, I'm an architect, so the traffic issue I do leave up to MDOT. I know people have complaints about that, but this report, we leave to them of how the best way to handle it in the situation. So because it's a PUD, they can't do a full recommendation yet. So if we take the next step on this, then what we would do is take a look at that whole intersection, take a look at what MDOT suggests, try to do what we're doing, which I'll get to later down the road on Atwater, and make it better for safety and make it better for pedestrian. We're eliminating that curb cut. We're cleaning up that area where Lake Street and both Flint Street meet. So those are the things that we'll be working on as we get forward on that and get deeper into this. And that's it.
All right. Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Tringali. Slam.
Thank you. I got a couple questions for you.
No problem. Let me pull up a site plan as you're talking.
I'm basically looking at the pretty color pictures because they're easier for me to understand.
For which ones?
The
I
big
have
one.
several.
The
Okay.
big guy here. One of my big concerns with the project is the neighbors with the single family adjoining the property. You know, the transition, of course, from single family to multifamily is always traumatic.
At the peninsula?
It's always depending. And the other problem I have is concern is the Lake Street right-of-way. You know, so particularly the Lake Street doesn't really have a clearly defined right-of-way. I researched the plat on it back during the last phase when the previous purchasers were going, and it's really very undefined. So one of the problems with a small maintenance department and the snow plowing and the garbage pickup and stuff is, you know, where does the road end? Where will the snow plow go? So it's basically, we'll be, you know, driving through the middle of an apartment complex trying to figure out how to maintain the snow. This is a big concern to me. I'm always talking to them about how they wreck my yard. And so I wonder if you considered, you know, there's always talk about like leaving this open for the public. The public never goes there. Have you considered putting the buildings down closer to the water and, you know, asking for all your, you know, special conditions? Put all the buildings down by the water, make a nice little cove marina for yourself, close off the boat launch, and then use the Flint Street area for your park area or for your extra parking, and, you know, relocate the street. So this leads me to the stacking issue going out onto Flint Street, stacking issue being the left or turn lane going out on M24. This is my own personal shortcut. Whenever the Loda over by the Lake Orion Truck Accessories is backed up, I cut down the street speed, go out to Flint Street so I can get out. So this is going to interfere with my ability to escape. Just, it's germane to these people. That's the real, what they've been talking about. So I just wonder if you consider perhaps moving that entrance, and the homeowners may not like this, but moving that entrance farther west on Flint Street and closing off the whole end down here and, you know, moving the buildings closer to the lake. I would have more, I personally would feel better, instead of trying to make your own little park there, bring all your stuff in, make a nice big enclosure, keep your stuff in the bay, and then let the periphery, the outside of your project, be more buffered from the residents on Flint Street and stuff. So the other question I have is, why do you keep the boathouse? Is there something special that,
Just, it's one of the buildings that we think we can preserve. And like I showed you some of those old photos early on, I think there's something that we can do to it in the next phase to actually bring back some of the things that the marina once had. That's the only reason.
that's the other thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it looks to me like just interferes with your ability to use the property, and I'm all
I
for
think
it.
there's something there. Certain buildings are worth saving.
Okay, so that's
So-
just personal choice then?
Correct.
Okay. Other than that, yeah, the whole Lake Street thing going through the middle of the apartment complex, I just don't like it. I don't like the entrance so close to M24. I didn't like what's there now. I know that I don't know how many homeowners actually use Lake Street to get out. I don't really know. Originally I thought about perhaps you should just close off Lake Street, cul-de-sac, and let everybody go up the hill and go out. And you can have the rest of it for your use. We could do some license agreement. But, it just some thoughts. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, so just to answer a couple, we tried some different options to try to get that to work. We thought it was more damaging to close down that harbor and put everything on the water and more difficult. So we did look at that at one time. This was a better approach. And then it's really not an apartment complex. This is more of a harbor. And that's kind of the look that we're after here. It's those old carriage units that are above the garages. So these units especially, these are all basically, one-bedroom units through here, two-bedroom units through here. So these are much different than the other complex that we have going.
They're more like cottages.
Yes.
Or condos, I'm sorry. More like condos.
Yeah, they're more of a harbor look that you see more in coastal cottages.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify, and Mr. Lamb brought up some good points, and well-thought-out points. Lake Street is part of a plat, and to vacate a platted street is nearly impossible to do because of all the stakeholders and other people that are part of the subdivision further to the west, going out toward Darling Street and Andrews Street, and that's all part of the plat. So everybody in the plat, plus their mortgagers and anybody else that has interest in the plat would have to sign off on that. So the Lake Street, it has there's no defined road, there's a defined right-of-way. So there's a specific in the plat, meets and bounds and follows the road, but the road meanders within those confines. And what we have proposed is to not change the right-of-way, because that would take a plat act and basically an act of Congress, and more than that, because you'd have to go to circuit court and almost to the state Supreme Court to vacate that road without all the signatures of everybody on the plat. So we are shifting the road, the physical road within the right-of-way. I just want to clarify that. And we did look at your suggestion about moving the entrance of Lake Street from Flint Street further west. There's a huge grade differential there. Dominic, if you may, these areas here, these are all walkouts. There you go. He'll explain that architecturally. Thank you.
So basically, there's a big grade difference through here. So the grade starts to continue up through there. So getting a road in here, we found challenges with just getting the percentage of slope for the road. So hopefully that answered some of your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tringali, for being here. And I do believe that the Mosheri Development Company is great for this community. I feel lucky that they're here entertaining this idea. But I have a few questions, and I know you would like to have questions that pertain to the development specifically, but I'd like to just mention a couple other things before I conclude. But in my readings, we all spent a lot of time on this. If not a dozen hours minimum per person, I'm sure it was more. And in my readings, like even with the traffic study, you asked, do I have any questions? Yes, it does state right turn taper warrant, and that would be for the Flint Street M24. To me, I believe that's either slow down lane or a right turn activity. Which one is it?
Yeah, it's actually still, I think, in progress. Because it's a PUD, I don't think we had a definitive answer yet back. But basically, I think it's going to be a right turn lane that's in there. But I think we're going to get all those answers at the next step a little bit more in working with MDOT.
Okay.
And that's my understanding of it.
Okay. And I've got random notes that I've written down over my many, many times that I've picked this up to start a new review again, because questions would come up in my mind. I wanted to ask about you having your plan about paving Lake Street and then Andrews Street north to Flint Street.
Yeah, correct. As of now, I think we were repaving this whole thing all the way up to somewhere, I think in this area here.
And it states in this document, up to Flint Street, Andrews Street to Flint Street. I would encourage a consideration, if this goes through, of paving Flint Street east to M24 for the same reason that you're doing Andrews. And then also maybe some of these curb cut issues that one resident spoke about could be addressed.
Okay.
I have concerns about light pollution. When Commissioner Lamb mentioned moving them closer. Right now, currently, the lake has a lot of light pollution out there. It's gaining traction with some of the new builds that now have eave lights that are downlit and their complete retaining walls are lit, and I find that to be somewhat unnecessary, and I think that's another problem. It's going to be apartments, and I don't have an answer to this, but I just want to throw it out there. I'm concerned about covenants. Are there covenants for the apartments that this, like, restrictive covenants?
Yeah, we have our lease agreements is what we would have, but I don't think any covenants like you're saying, like a condo doc, no.
Okay, that might come before the village council.
The lease agreements? Yeah, I don't think that's an issue at all.
Okay.
So,
There is some water issues there on that corner, just so you're aware. The rain sewer clogs up on the corner of Flint Street and M24 on the southwest corner, and I'm sure you're going to address those type of things.
correct.
The, in your calculations, I had asked the planner earlier today, I called, and the bottomlands, are they being utilized for the calculations of density or not? At one point, I thought I read in here, such as on page 139, there was a mention about the proposed development will not exceed the allowed density. The site's bottomlands are parts of platted lots and/or license agreements, and are they being utilized to help determine density?
They're not included. I was just told.
Okay, because there's another parcel that we're going to talk about later that has a similar situation.
Correct.
With
In
the
this particular one,
bottomlands.
this new change and go around to it, they're not included.
Okay. And I also would like to just mention that in this PUD agreement prior, I think it's a little bit confusing for the audience, on June of this year, what was decided was the eligibility of the PUD. The first time we've got our true plans were this last week.
Correct.
We've had some renderings, there's been opportunities for people to look at upon occasion, but the true plans were just released, and that's what we're looking at tonight and talking about.
Correct.
The, in the PUD request, there are 9 variances that you just covered that you are looking to get relief from.
Correct.
And along with that, a PUD provides 50% more density than is allowed, and you're looking for the full maximum of that, correct?
No.
No?
No.
I thought I saw that in the calculations that would allow it to be the 52. I know I read that.
Okay.
And my point is that this commission and/or the village council doesn't need to give 50%. They can give any portion of that. It could be 20. It could be 30. I think that the density, especially with the discussion tonight, is still a little too much for the community. And I would encourage to look at that and see if there's anything else that can be done, such as on the building unit 2, the very first one you started with, the one that's on the far east end possibly the elimination of that one unit and do some building two up on Lake Street, I do believe it is. You're asking for setback in both front and back. Some of those could be done with possibly a reduced density and some better planning of how to use the property. I feel the question tonight is whether or not this should go on to the village council for review. In other words, it's PUD acceptance for review by the village council, and then it would come back here again for final review. I believe that this board is much more talented to stay in that review process, and I do not plan on pushing that to the village council this evening. I'd rather have it stay here. There's a tremendous amount of material. Everybody's studied up on it, and this is where I think it belongs with this board.
Okay.
Comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I could just say, I agree with those last comments, Ken. On Friday of this past week, we received our 490-plus pages of information, which is very difficult to get a solid understanding. Give me, and I'm sure most of you, proper due diligence and time to do that due diligence. So with that, I agree, Ken. I need more time myself. I would not support this moving forward until I feel I have ample time to give our community the right assessment of these plans.
Commissioner comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have some concerns that probably need to be addressed before we can proceed any further. Several of those are, one, you did tell us that the submerged bottomlands would not be used in the calculation.
Correct.
And I know that that came up earlier in the first meeting. If that is in fact true, that calculation would then become 2.58 acres is what you would have of land here. And that is in agreement with what the engineer, our engineering consultant also came up with as buildable property. So the amount of land that you currently show at 2.7, it would need to be changed, and the density would then have to be adjusted accordingly. The second thing is that on building 2 and building 4, the driveways that come into these units utilize a significant portion of the current Lake Street right-of-way. The right-of-way along Lake Street is a public road, so the land in that area belongs to the public, obviously. So in this development, you are proposing to utilize that right-of-way to develop private driveways and limited access into these condos when this property would be available for use by any resident of the community or anyone in the state of Michigan that wanted to park along the street. So we need to find out a legal interpretation of how and what you can use the Lake Street right-of-way for with regards to this development and how much of this land that you can use for private development in completing this, in particular buildings number 2 and building number 4. With regards to building number 1, the 4-story, that still requires a special use from this board to decide on that particular building. Personally, I think that the building at 4 stories, 3 stories plus the garage underneath, is, out of scale and character. Is the same thing that we talked about at the original meeting, out of scale and character for the height and the size of the community that's there. It's going to become one of the largest, most prominent buildings in the city, and it doesn't relate to the rest of the community that it's tying in. It's overpowering. Some of the things that we're doing, we have some parking spaces that are assigned to this building that are partially in the right-of-way again. We have some trade-offs for the PUD that are things that you are giving to us in return for the PUD. One of those items are 2 spaces for the public safety boat docks, but those spaces are in the public right-of-way to begin with, so you can't give us what you don't own. So you'll need to take that out
of your proposals. The height overlay district, as we talked about, still needs to be determined. And section 9.03C1B, when discussing the MU district, calls for it to be a walkable area. And I think that to achieve some of that, and also in accordance with the engineer's recommendation, is that we're going to need a walk, we need a sidewalk on Lake Street to get the people to come through this community and down to this dock area that you guys are planning to make a public dock. The problem with it is I don't see how the public can get to this public dock that you're going to create, because I don't see any access across the private property to get to it. So we would need to see how we can access this amenity that you're going to give to the community. And I think that once we can get more clarifications on those things, the sidewalks, the amenities that you're actually giving, some of the other things that were going on, the redoing of the density based on the bottomlands, and a few other things, I believe that the docks that are shown here are all the docks that will ever be put in. Is that going to be in the final agreement? So that we'll know that there will be no more docks that will be built.
I think we can put that in there. We can address all those issues.
So, I would recommend that we table this item until we can get the legal interpretations, we can get some of the other information that we're requesting tonight, and then proceed forward with this particular.
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Is there any other further discussion?
I have two questions, that's all. I just might as well get them out now, so they've been really good at working on our questions.
Sure.
Interim, they don't waste any time. One of my circled items was the geometry of the boat launch and the ability to actually launch boats in and out of there, without blocking the road. Our current access points on the lake, like at the end of Flint Street, there's enough room there, it doesn't block through traffic whatsoever. So I was a bit concerned with a bunch of homeowners trying to get their first pontoon boat out there, blocking the road, those kind of issues. That is a concern with the geometry and the little side islands and things. So I would love to see you address that.
Is it because it doesn't fit or because it looks like a timing issue?
No, it looks like it doesn't. Look, you can maneuver the 26-foot tri-tune with the 30-foot trailer. It just doesn't look like it work with the geometry. I mean, just something to look at.
Having been up that ramp, that's a tough ramp.
Yeah, they used to use a high-low to put the boats in and out
Correct.
of the water. Because Scott, I paid him $75 to high-low my boat down the street. So, the other question I want to follow up with is, I know it's late. So there's 40 residents, 40 boats, one boat per residence. The rest of us can have, 5, 6 boats. I don't suppose a rental person is going to have multiple boats.
Correct.
It's just doesn't seem probable. So I really would like to see some kind of definitive number on the boats
I think we can do that.
and across all 3 projects. It's a huge number of boats, but there should be some limit. It would be nice if you guys control all the property. I calculated for each boat slip, if we just use a traditional offshore, you need what? You got 12 feet for the boat and a hoist. You have to have hoists on that shoreline. I don't know if you've been out there in the winter, but you should have a hoist. And then you've got a little dock next to it, 3-foot dock, Ken, 4-foot dock.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, so, 15, 16 foot per boat. So I don't know how many you really can put in along the line. I'd love to see some kind of evaluation just to answer the people's questions about how many boats.
Okay.
That could really define it and save a lot of problems.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to correct myself. My apologies. I said 50-some units. It's 40, but the 2.5 is less than that. So I still stand on my comments about density.
Okay.
And I also would like to just add, and we can talk about again with the next developments, but I thought the weed sad as one parcel, that was a good comment made by one of our citizens here. And then also the construction, whatever gets done, possibly construction traffic times, like they're allowed to bring trucks in at 7 a.m. and they got to get out by 3, something like that. That would help.
Just a quick question. The weed shed, I've got 2 properties, and I've got 2 different bills for the weed shed. Are you sure it's per parcel and not per foot? Per parcel. It's definitely per parcel? Okay, I just wanted clarification. It used to be per foot.
It is per parcel by foot.
Correct.
By foot. Each parcel has a certain
Yeah.
width on the lake.
Okay, so they're going to pay for their front, well, I'm asking, that's the question. They're going to pay for their 800 feet of shoreline.
As one parcel.
But at one parcel, but they'll still pay the pro rata foot price. Well, that's
clarifies
equitable. That's equitable. So if it's by paying by the foot, which I thought, if they have 800 foot, the apartment complex will pay for the 800 feet, correct? Okay, thank you.
I wasn't sure about that either.
All right. Any further discussion?
Just one thing to Mr. Tringali. You guys did pay, when we talked the first time, you did do a good job on realigning these places along Flint Street,
Thank you.
which did make a big difference in the way that was done, because 3 foot off of the sidewalk would have been, I'd still be talking a week from now. But
Okay.
you did do that, and I'm sure you guys will figure out how to make this building work too. But at the current size and the way it is, it's not working. We get those legal interpretations, we're good.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor, was supported for tabling till we get legal
Yes.
consult
Any information back?
and information. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, unanimous, motion carries.
So on those questions, are you going to give those to us specifically, or just what you said tonight?
What we said tonight will be in our minutes.
Yeah,
Perfect.
we'll get it to you.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Chairman?
Yeah.
Also, due to the time,
So, please, we still have a meeting.
Mr. Chairman, due to the time, I don't believe that it's worth, we'll be here till midnight to continue on, that we end this, end with this item and pick up at Mystic Cove at our next meeting due to the time being well beyond 10:30.
So I believe we need a motion to table the new business of line items 9B, C, and D. Are you making that motion?
That is the motion.
Okay.
It's support.
And there's motion and supported. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
We're actually willing to do a special meeting too. We've mentioned that before.
Okay.
So.
So.
Well, you guys came back fast last time, and you think in a
Well,
couple
on
of
the
weeks?
2 projects that we're postponing, we can do a special meeting on that and set that up accordingly.
Okay. Do we have commissioner comments, or are we?
Real quick, the question that wasn't raised about the, we had spoke to Laura briefly during the break about the question by the public about the MU zoning, which would affect both the last 2 parcels. And I know, Laura, how would we phrase that to request an interpretation
Request a legal opinion.
on the, I can't really spell it out. It was they questioned the interpretation of the MU zoning, this particular use for the next 2 projects as being inappropriate. And I wonder if we could get an opinion on that, whether it's a language issue within the ordinance itself, or whether it's a functional, structural issue with the project.
Does your planner have a clear understanding of the question involved, so I can try to provide an answer? Because
I think
I'm not
so.
sure of the question.
I think so, because it was provided in an email to us by Mr. Sater that somewhat outlined it, that, does anybody recall that? Do you recall that, Mr. O'Neill? So we could forward that to our planner as well, address that, because that is one item that's still on the table. And then I'd also like to just mention that tonight given to us, if you haven't seen it, Mr. Tringali, possibly you have, is the comments from our civil engineers that were dated September 4th and 5th.
Correct. We received those.
To pay attention to those, because
Yep.
we're going to want to get those cleaned up as well.
That'll give us an opportunity to do that.
Yes, good. Thank you.
Any other commissioners' comments?
Well, I have-
Commissioner Lamb or Commissioner Van Portly?
Yeah, I want to say thank you, everyone, for coming. For me, that's what this is all about, and I appreciate all the comments. I wrote notes on every one of them. 37 people got up to speak. Thank you for that. And then we had probably another dozen letters. That's valuable stuff for us that are here. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Commissioner Lamb?
Okay, so do I need to keep all this stuff for the next meeting? Or is it all going to be redone?
Oh, no, we're not redoing that, are we?
No.
Don't they have to?
Yeah, not the parking studies and all those kinds of things we don't need redone at this point.
So you advise me to keep these for additional 30 days?
I would.
Okay, because I don't keep this stuff. I rely on,
Trust me, I don't either.
there's a lot of this stuff. Okay, thank you. That's all the comments I got. I'm going to keep them till the next meeting.
My comments again are just on getting the information as soon as we can, having a couple days to review this much information, again, for the importance of how big this project is for the community and other future projects would definitely be greatly appreciated. 3 days just isn't enough time.
I guess the one thing I'd say, I'd like to invite you to come more of our meetings, not just these meetings, but come and participate, not only here, but also in the council.
Correct.
How would we find out about the special meeting that was proposed?
Well, there
Susan?
hasn't been one yet, so they said they were available for a special meeting, but since we need a legal opinion, we don't know when that can happen, so it's kind of hard to set a meeting.
No,
Mr. Chair?
right now, but how would we find out in the future?
Well, I think every meeting's posted online.
Yeah,
Everything's
it
posted
usually,
online.
well,
Some special meetings aren't always announced.
then you need to watch,
That's a legal obligation.
Yeah, everything's announced.
you need to watch the Orion review and the public notices that's in the back. That's where most people will pick up on this. And you could also just message the commissioners. I welcome that. Hey, if there's a special meeting, let me know, and I'll put you on a list. So,
Yes.
Also published on cable.
Yeah, so it's in the community bulletin board on cable, Comcast and AT&T.
Start messaging, so I know that these two. Missing out on the special meeting, they're confused, I don't want to bring it up yet. I emailed Nick Smith, with the email address that's on the Orion, the village website, is orion.org, but he doesn't have it.
We,
So I never got a response, and then,
I spoke with Susan to correct that today, so that'll get updated.
and then I also, when I have, emailed the village council, it's, Matheson, the email address that's on the website is wrong.
we've had some,
They have two different types of emails, the council members have a .org.
It's just spelled wrong.
Yeah, okay, I'm just saying, and then the other commissioners have a .us, so sometimes people get that mixed up.
It's just spelled wrong.
Just
Right.
spelled wrong. Okay.
and there has been some IT issues as of late, but we've gotten them cleared up. But when Ms. Han spoke about never got a response, I'm not so sure. Did anybody get that email? From Ms. Jody
Everybody
Han?
sends me, but I don't recall the
Neither do I.
17 questions, or I would have.
So I apologize. Yeah, so I'm just saying, it's not the perfect way, but we do our best. Mr. O'Neill.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, on the agenda for the village will be a new person to do our website. That's something the commission has been wanting for some time.
Good.
All right, thank you. Back to comments, Commissioner comments?
No, no comments.
Commissioner Sable?
Just thanks, everybody, for your input, and
I do appreciate everybody coming out. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
We do not have our next scheduled meeting is Monday, October 3rd. But as of now, that's the scheduled meeting. That could change. We will do our best to let everyone know if that changes. But I think we're looking only at a couple possible dates. It's going to be very difficult to have a special meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.